When Stormbreaker finds the head. What if Thor had aimed for the head on Titan? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. The air is already burning as the Bifrost tears open the sky, spilling a streak of violent color over shattered rock and drifting ash. Thor crashes down with Rocket and Groot at his side, but his eyes are fixed only on one figure. Thanos stands there, gauntlet raised, the 6 stones pulsing in a slow, terrible rhythm as he begins to turn. Stormbreaker spins from Thor's hand. This time, there is no hesitation, no cruel need to make the Titan feel his pain. He knows what is at stake as he angles the throw higher, the weapon whistling through the thin air toward the purple ridge of Thanos' brow. For a moment, the Mad Titan can see it coming, his fingers tightening around the gauntlet as he reaches for the last word he will ever speak. The axe hits home. It shears through bone and brain in a brutal, clean impact, burying itself deep in Thanos' skull as the Power Stone flares in reflex. The half-formed glow of the gauntlet stutters, arcs of energy crackling across the metal as the Titan's mouth works around a strangled, unfinished, "You should have..." Then nothing. No flash of white, no cosmic thunderclap. Just a wet, heavy collapse as Thanos' body crashes to the ground. Silence follows, the kind that feels wrong. The stones are still humming on his hand, each gem bright and alive, but the snap never happens, and the dusting never begins. On Titan's broken surface, Tony Stark waits for the universe to end and realizes, slowly, that it hasn't. As he stares at the corpse, he begins to understand that they have won in the simplest, ugliest way possible. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. Not the invasion of New York, not the helplessness on that Q ship, not the image of a teenager dying in his arms. He can see the gauntlet cooling on Thanos' fingers, the most dangerous object in existence lying inches from the ground. With Thanos dead instantly and all 6 Infinity Stones still active, the universe has been spared the blip, but the Avengers are now standing over a weapon that can rewrite everything. On Wakanda, the sky never darkens with ash. Wanda never has to feel Vision crumble in her hands. The Outriders fall without purpose, as their master's will vanishes, and yet the true storm is only beginning. Who claims the gauntlet? Who decides what to undo, what to preserve, what to change? This matter is not up for debate in the minds of kings, governments, and gods who will soon learn what has happened. In this timeline, there is no 5-year scar, no portal charge at Avengers Compound, no desperate time heist. Instead, there is a quiet battlefield on Titan, a dead god, and a decision that may break the team in slower, more insidious ways. Did Thor's perfect throw accidentally choose the one future Doctor Strange refused to? In the next section, we'll follow the immediate fallout on Titan and Wakanda, Thor's new burden, Strange's silent calculations, and the first moves in a political scramble that will reshape the MCU without the blip or endgame. Rewinding canon, how 1 inch changes Infinity War. So we rewind, not to change the story beyond recognition, but to watch how 1 inch of steel, driven 1 inch higher, fractures everything that follows. To see it clearly, we have to return to where Infinity War already came within a heartbeat of victory. On Titan, the boy from Missouri is the first crack. Star-Lord's hands shake as he realizes Gamora is dead, and for a moment, the plan is working in spite of him. Mantis is on Thanos' shoulders, murmuring that he is grieving, that his mind is a storm barely held in check. Iron Man and Spider-Man haul at the gauntlet, each finger peeling away with agonizing slowness as he begins to hope this impossible scheme might succeed. Then Peter Quill snaps, hammering his blasters into Thanos' face. The spell breaks. The Titan roars awake. One outburst, and the stones are his again. Later, on Wakanda's torn red soil, Thor makes his own fatal choice. Stormbreaker crashes through the beam of a completed Infinity Gauntlet, drives into Thanos' chest, and the Mad Titan sinks to one knee. The Russos have said it plainly. If Thor had gone for the head, the snap would never have happened. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. Not after the destruction of Asgard. He chooses pain over precision, a wound over an execution. Thanos has just enough breath left to whisper his triumph, raise burned fingers, and end half of all life. In our branch, the power is the same, the throw is the same, only the target shifts. Stormbreaker bites through skull instead of sternum. There is no taunt, no slow exhale, no time for a last, trembling flex of the gauntlet. Thanos dies instantly, eyes glassing over, as the light of 6 stones still burns inches from his ruined hand. Let's explore the depths of it. The Infinity Stones in the MCU are not sentient allies. They have no loyalty, no built-in failsafe. They obey whoever can survive their power, from a celestial on nowhere to a raging Hulk on a ruined Earth. Thanos' death does not dismiss them. It only leaves a loaded weapon on the ground, a cracked golden gauntlet, still warm, still humming with the capacity to rewrite causality, time, and self. Canon gives us a brutal clarity. The snap happens. Dust drifts over Wakanda and Titan. 5 years pass in a single cut, and the world we meet in Endgame is defined by shared grief. Steve at support groups, Natasha clinging to routine, Tony retreating into a lakeside family, and a daughter he will die to preserve. Out of that trauma comes a desperate unity, a time heist, and the portal charge that lets Captain America whisper, "Avengers, assemble." Here, there is no blip, no 5-year scar in the middle of history. Vision survives in Wakanda's grass, Wanda screaming with relief instead of loss. Peter Parker never vanishes from Titan. Tony never drifts alone in space, long enough to believe he will die there. But in exchange, the Avengers are forced into something colder, custodianship. They are no longer simply trying to undo one man's crime. They are standing over the crime weapon itself, knowing that whoever next wears it will hold reality's throat. This matter is not up for debate, not in the way a normal mission is. Who guards the stones? Who decides when, or if, they are ever used? Thor can see that in saving everyone, he may have birthed a slower disaster, one fought in councils and corridors instead of on battlefields. There is no common grave to bind them, only competing visions of what comes next. And as he looks down at Thanos' corpse, he knows the real war has not been prevented, merely delayed and made far more intimate. In the next section, we'll stay on that field as the dust that never fell becomes something else. Suspicion, temptation, and the first quiet argument over who, if anyone, is worthy to touch the gauntlet at all. 2 battlefields, 1 dead Titan, Titan and Wakanda in parallel. So we stay on that field, but now the camera splits. 2 horizons, 1 dead Titan. On Titan, Stormbreaker has already done its work. Thanos' body slumps sideways, the massive frame suddenly small as he crashes into the broken rock, the gauntlet still faintly glowing on his hand. For a moment, the colors of the stones pulse in confused sequence, as if the universe itself is trying to understand why the will behind them has simply stopped. Far away, in Wakanda, the sky tears open, the circular wound of the Bifrost and the quantum crackle of space folding around the stones should herald an unstoppable figure. The heroes on the ground brace, weapons raised, hearts pounding, but nothing steps through. No purple giant, no raised gauntlet, just a trembling edge of light that flickers, stutters, and then seals itself, leaving only the thud of distant artillery and the ragged breathing of exhausted soldiers. Confusion hits harder than any blast. Thor is nowhere to be seen, lost to them in that last desperate throw. Vision lies shattered on the grass, but still breathing, the Mind Stone dim and fractured in his forehead. Wanda is on her knees, shoulders shaking as she struggles to stand, having just held back an entire army and then torn the stone from the man she loves. As he watches, Steve can see the Outriders begin to falter, their mindless ferocity suddenly stripped of purpose. Without Thanos' guiding will, their assault turns from coordinated slaughter into a chaotic rout, beasts crashing into shields, into each other, into retreat. On Titan, the silence is different. Tony staggers, one hand pressed to his bleeding side, armor flickering and failing as he stares at the corpse. He knows, in some distant rational part of his mind, that this is what they came for. Still, his legs threaten to give way, as he begins to understand that the nightmare he's carried since New York has ended not with a snap, but with an axe and a single perfect miscalculation from a god. Peter stands a few steps behind him, hands shaking, eyes wide, the boy trying to reconcile the enemy from space with the slack-jawed body on the ground. Nearby, Star-Lord hovers between hysterical relief and a guilt he refuses to name, because he can see the others thinking it. If he had lost control a few seconds later, if he had held his anger just a breath longer, perhaps Strange's plan would have been different. Strange himself is almost unnervingly calm, cloak settling around him as he studies the gauntlet, as he studies Thor, as he studies the absence of dust. There is no horror montage, no crumbling allies, no ash on the wind, just eerie quiet on both worlds, and the heavy, almost anticlimactic realization that the universe is still intact, and that the true problem is lying on the ground in a cracked golden glove. This matter is not up for debate, Strange tells himself in silence. Those stones will be claimed by someone. The only question is who. Let's explore the depths of it. With Thanos gone, and the stones unbound, who has the right or the wisdom to decide what happens to them now, and what happens when the first hand reaches down, believing for a moment that he can do better than the Titan ever dreamed. Thor's hollow, victory, guilt without the blip. Thor is the first to move. The echo of the axe strike still hangs in the air as he wrenches Stormbreaker free, the blade sliding out of Thanos' skull with a wet final sound. Purple blood spatters his armor, steams against his skin, and for a moment he can hear nothing except his own words replaying in his head. I told you you'd die for that. He has done it. He aimed for the head. He did what every warrior, every tactician, every bitter voice in his own mind would later say he should have done. The Titan lies broken at his feet, the gauntlet limp on a dead hand, the stones humming softly, as if indifferent to the corpse they crowned. He waits for the surge of triumph, for the roar that should come with vengeance fulfilled. It does not come. There is only a hollow, widening silence as he begins to understand that killing Thanos has not killed the weight pressing down on his chest. This is not the shattered, overweight Thor we know from Endgame, drowning himself in ale and distraction. This Thor stands tall, armor intact, muscles taut, every inch the hero who arrived in Wakanda, wreathed in lightning and applause. Still, he can see how close he came to failing all of them. He felt the crackle of the stones as Thanos tried to close his fingers. He saw the almost snap, the almost end of every realm he swore to protect. The near miss becomes its own wound, a ghost of a disaster that only he truly feels, because he was the one close enough to smell the Titan's breath as the universe nearly died. Around him, Titan stirs. Tony staggers forward, armor sparking, eyes fixed on Thanos' body. There is gratitude there, wary and exhausted, but edged with something else. As if Stark is already calculating what comes next, already afraid of what a living god with an axe and no plan might do with 6 stones at arm's reach. Star-Lord breaks the tension with a bitter, rasping chuckle, nudging the corpse with his boot. Congratulations, Pirate Angel, you finally got the head. The words should be a joke. They land like a verdict. Strange says nothing. He only watches Thor, gaze unreadable, cloak stirring in the thin alien wind. As he looks at the gauntlet, then at Thor's hand, then back again, Thor feels more exposed than if he were standing naked on the Bifrost. This matter is not up for debate. Strange had told himself about the stones, and Thor can sense that same iron resolve now turned toward him. Thor was raised on tales of clear battles, monsters to slay, armies to break. As he stands over Thanos, he knows that part, at least, was simple. Stormbreaker answered the question of who would win the fight. It does nothing to answer what should be done with the power that almost unmade creation. Odin would have weighed omens, Frigga would have counseled mercy, Asgard's court would have schemed. All of that is gone. He is not a king anymore. He is a weapon that survived his purpose. In this, he is closer to Ned Stark than to the swaggering prince he once was. Ned swung the sword, but hated the sentence. Thor feels the same reluctant duty settling over him, heavier than any crown. The boy who reveled in war is gone. What remains is a man staring at 6 stones and understanding dimly that killing Thanos was the easy part. A thought occurs, sudden and unwelcome. There may be no one else here who can even touch that power and live. The Hulk is gone. Tony is only human beneath the metal. Strange wields spells, not raw cosmic force. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. If someone must lift the gauntlet, if someone must decide whether to guard the universe or reshape it, every eye on Titan is already turning, slowly, toward the god who aimed for the head. And as Thor feels their attention settle on him, he realizes the battle with Thanos might have been his last moment of clarity before a far darker choice. Let's explore the depths of it. What happens when the only thing standing between the stones and the rest of existence is a man who no longer trusts his own judgment? Doctor Strange's silence. 14,605 futures. Rewritten on Titan, the silence after Thanos falls is almost louder than the battle. Dust hangs in the air, the gauntlet still smolders on his ruined arm, and for a moment, everyone lets themselves believe it. They won early. No snap, no blip, no half of existence turned to ash. Stephen Strange does not celebrate. He stands a little apart from the others, cloak settling around his shoulders as he watches Thor pull Stormbreaker free. He knows the god's aim has just carved a new path through time itself, and the memory of his own words echoes back at him with a bitter edge. 14,605 futures. Only one where they win. He hears himself say it again, as if some other man spoke in his place. Was this it? Or has Thor just broken the only script that ever led them to survival? He begins replaying the visions behind his eyes. In every winning strand he clung to before, there was the snap, the blip. Stark dying years from now, not here. Rogers broken, but unbowed. A second fight, a time heist, a final stand on a field crowded with portals and ghosts returned. The victory he chose had always been stained with 5 years of loss. Now the stones sit together on a dead titan's hand, humming with unchecked power, and he can see none of the familiar landmarks. Outwardly, Strange's voice is calm, as he tells Stark they need to secure the gauntlet, to regroup, to think. Inwardly, he is already recalculating, feeling the fragile threads of causality fray. The fixed point he had steered them toward, Thanos snapping, the universe breaking, the Avengers reforged in grief, has vanished beneath a single, decisive swing. This matter is not up for debate inside his own mind. The future he bargained for has been replaced by something wild and uncharted. Let's explore the depths of it. In all those futures, he never truly lingered on timelines where Thanos died before the snap with the stones still united. He avoided them, not because they were impossible, but because every time he brushed against them, he saw hands far worse than Thanos's reaching for that power. Kree warlords, celestial cults, a terrified council of worlds, deciding that if one madman could almost end everything, then only their iron rule over the stones could keep it safe. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again without some form of guidance. He raises his hand, apparently only to conjure a simple binding spell around the gauntlet. In truth, his magic reaches deeper, tasting the raw convergence of 6 fundamental forces. It is chaos barely leashed, a storm that wants a wielder. As he feels that hunger, he understands that their enemy is no longer a single tyrant with a twisted sense of balance, but the universe's own instinct to place such power under someone's control, anyone's. Strange lets his hand fall. He meets Stark's eyes, then Thor's, and says nothing of the futures that once guided him. He knows that if he reveals how often this moment ended in horrors beyond Thanos, they will all try to solve it at once, each according to their own fear. The true danger now is not death, but choice. Quietly, he makes his decision. He will not tell them everything he saw. Instead, he will walk beside them through this unwritten world, shaping their steps where he can, guarding the secret that their victory may be the beginning of something far worse. The gauntlet on the ground, who dares touch godhood? For a moment, no one moves. Thanos lies broken on Titan's torn soil, Stormbreaker still buried in the ruin of his skull, and beside the severed arm that once held the fate of half the universe, the Infinity Gauntlet simply rests. The metal is blackened, warped at the knuckles, but intact. The stones pulse faintly, each glow out of rhythm with the others, yet together forming something disturbingly close to a heartbeat. Even in death, he can see, the Titan's will lingers in the air, and every eye is dragged toward that single terrible object. Tony is the first to speak. His voice is low, hoarse, stripped of the usual armor. We secure it, lock it down. I build something around it. We figure out what it can do without, killing all of us. He begins moving toward it, not too close, hands half raised as if approaching a bomb that might decide to change its mind. The engineer in him is already cataloging, measuring, imagining containment fields and fail-safes, because still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. Star-Lord cuts across him, the words sharp. No, we blast it, now, scatter the pieces. I'm not letting another purple maniac pick that thing up and fix the universe. There is a bitter edge of levity in his tone, but under it sits raw panic. He knows what a single bad choice can cost. As he stares at the stones, he can see Xandar burning, his mother dying, the long trail of bodies Thanos left behind. Drax steps forward, shoulders squared. I will wear it, he declares. I will use it to honor my wife and daughter. To him, the logic is simple. Power killed his family. Power, in his hand, must be the answer. The boy in him who lost everything still believes that if he just hits hard enough, the universe will finally make sense. Strange's hand snaps up before Drax can take another step. His voice is quiet, but iron. This matter is not up for debate. He has seen what happens when lesser beings touch a single stone, let alone all 6. The Collector's Vault, the Nova Corps' desperate warnings, the way the Power Stone nearly tore the Guardians apart. In the MCU's brutal arithmetic, only creatures like Thanos, the Hulk, perhaps Thor, or Captain Marvel can survive channeling all of it. For everyone else, a single touch could mean instant death. Or something worse, bodies and minds warped into unrecognizable forms. He looks at the gauntlet and feels, for a moment, that it is looking back. It's not only a weapon, he says. Whoever holds it becomes the most powerful force in existence. Every empire, every warlord, every frightened government will understand that. They will come, and they will not be as restrained as we are. The political weight of it hangs heavier than the corpse on the ground. This is a crown without a throne, and each of them knows what men have done for less. Tony's jaw tightens. So we don't touch it. You magic it, freeze it, put it in a box, and throw the box into a black hole. Strange hesitates. He can see 1,000 branching paths, none clean. I can attempt a stasis spell, he concedes. Hold it while we find a way off Titan, but these are not simple relics. They are 6 fundamental forces. I do not know if magic can contain their will. The stones pulse again, a slow, synchronized thrum, as if answering him. No one reaches for the gauntlet, not yet. They stand in a broken circle, around godhood itself, each imagining a different future, each hearing a different call. And as Strange begins to weave the first shimmering lines of his spell, he wonders which of them will be the first to decide that holding that power is worth the risk, and what the stones will do when someone finally dares to try. Meanwhile, in Wakanda, a battle that ends too quietly. Strange's spell begins to take form on Titan as the dust of battle settles, but the story does not wait for him there. Far across the stars, the echo of Thor's choice reaches Wakanda before any words can. It arrives as absence. On the torn red fields outside the Golden City, the Outriders falter, one by one at first. Then in ugly, rippling waves, their frenzy breaks. They still hurl themselves against the scarred Wakandan shield, but the pattern is wrong now, the coordination gone. The Hive has lost its mind. Okoye can see it in the way they claw each other, shrieking, as if some distant command has been cut mid-sentence. The Black Order feels it too. Proxima and Corvus, harrying Wanda, and Vision through the forest's shattered roots, hesitate for a moment as he feels something tear through the bond that made Thanos' will a constant pressure at the back of their thoughts. Corvus snarls, presses the attack, but his rhythm is off. It is enough. Steve and T'Challa hit them from opposite sides, shields flashing, spears driving. One falls, the other flees, retreating not with a plan, but with the animal instinct of someone who suddenly realizes there is no master left to impress. Near the front line, Banner, half buried in the Hulkbuster's wreckage, watches the remaining dropships pull up and away in ragged formation. No triumphant landing, no purple titan stepping through the breach, just engines screaming as they flee into the upper atmosphere, leaderless and afraid. The shield opens not for the end of the world, but for cleanup. Wakandan warriors advance in disciplined lines, spearing the last Outriders, dragging alien corpses into burning piles. Then, the sky itself seems to shudder. The portal that should have delivered Thanos flickers, a wound in reality straining to stay open, then collapses in on itself with a sound that is more felt than heard. Steve looks up, chest heaving. Beside him, T'Challa narrows his eyes. Wanda, still hovering protectively over Vision, feels the Mind Stone in his forehead pulse once in protest. No one turns to dust. No one vanishes. Instead, there is a silence that feels wrong. Shuri arrives on the field, breathless, eyes already cataloging every piece of alien metal. She knows something massive has happened off-world. The energy signatures from that fading portal, the way the Outriders' neural patterns spiked and then crashed, these are not the marks of a clean victory. Let's explore the depths of it, she thinks. But not here, not in front of the wounded. In the command tent, the shift from battlefield tactics to statecraft is immediate. Holograms of Wakanda's defense grid flicker beside projections of known Kree routes, Nova Corps distress records, every scrap of intel on Thanos' scattered forces. Okoye argues for hunting down the fleeing ships. Shuri counters that they must first understand the technology left behind. T'Challa listens, as he always does, then speaks with a quiet finality that tells them this matter is not up for debate. Whatever stopped Thanos did so far from Earth, but his armies, his lieutenants, his weapons, They are now relics without a religion, drifting across the galaxy, waiting for a new prophet. At the medical pavilion, Vision lies on a reinforced table, the Mind Stone dim but intact. His synthetic skin is torn, his systems glitching, yet he is alive. He begins to speak, faltering, about a pressure that had been wrapping around the stone, a hand that never quite closed. Now that pressure is gone, replaced by a watchful emptiness. Earth has not just survived, it has inherited a living infinity stone, bound to a sentient being who can feel when the cosmos reaches for it. Wanda sits beside him, fingers laced with his. She can see the fear in his eyes, but also something else, the dawning understanding that he is no longer merely a target, he is a prize. Shuri hovers nearby, scanning readouts, already considering what protections, what cloaking might be possible. For a moment, the boy she once teased as too noble for his own code looks less like a man and more like a vault no wall can truly hide. As night falls, the battlefield grows eerily still. Fires crackle around heaps of alien dead. Broken dropships jut from the earth at odd angles, their hulls glowing with residual, unfamiliar energies. Wakandan warriors stand among the wreckage, spears lowered, gazes turned outward to the stars, rather than inward to their own losses. T'Challa walks the line, cloak brushing ash and alien ichor. He knows what comes next is not mourning half the universe, but something far more complicated. We will not be the only ones to sense this, he says softly, more to himself than to Okoye at his side. Power has moved. The universe will feel that absence, and when it does, visitors will come, seeking what almost destroyed us. We must be ready to greet them, not as victims, but as those who stood in the path and did not fall. It is a victory without dust, without a snap. Yet as the stars wheel overhead, the silence over Wakanda feels less like peace, and more like the held breath before the next storm. Extraction from Titan. Who comes home and how? On Titan, there is no cheering, just the thin, metallic smell of burnt ozone and the heavier, stranger scent of a god's blood cooling on alien dust. Thanos' body lies where he fell, the ruined moon hanging overhead, and for a moment none of them move. The universe has been spared, yet the people who actually did it are stranded beside the corpse and the weapon that almost unmade creation. Tony is the first to break. He staggers back toward the wreck of the Benatar, armor flickering, HUD screaming damage reports. As he forces himself to focus on something he can fix, he begins ripping open panels, dragging scorched cables together, muttering power calculations under his breath. He knows the Guardian's ship is half slag, the Milano long gone, and their own ride is barely more than a coffin with engines. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. Not if there's a way off this rock. Strange watches him for a moment, cloak stirring in the thin wind. Then he raises his hands. Sparks bloom, but the portals that form are stunted, flickering, barely reaching the nearby ridges. Titan's distance, the strain of the time stone's absence from his neck, the exhaustion of what they've just survived, all of it drags at him. He can see the limits as clearly as the circles of light. Short hops, line of sight only, no quick doorway back to Earth. So they improvise. Tony patches life support and a single main thruster, swearing as he reroutes power through systems never meant to touch. Strange opens brief portals ahead of the crippled ship's projected course. Testing range. Feeling for the gaps in reality he can still bend. It becomes a tense, time-sensitive equation. What can they risk bringing through those unstable rings of light and onto a limping craft that might die in vacuum? The gauntlet lies a few paces from Thanos' hand, metal twisted, stones still glowing with a low, malignant pulse. Tony wants it, not for himself, but because leaving 6 cosmic superweapons on a dead world feels, to him, like leaving an armed nuke in an abandoned subway. Unknown scavengers, opportunistic warlords, even the cosmic powers already shaken by Xandar's fall. He can list them faster than his arc reactor used to beat. This matter is not up for debate, he says. They cannot walk away. Strange disagrees. Moving the gauntlet, concentrating that power near Earth, risks painting a target on the one planet that has already drawn too much attention. He has seen fragments of futures, branching paths, where the stone's presence turns their world into a beacon for things worse than Thanos. Let Titan be the grave and the warning, he argues. Let the universe forget where the body fell. Thor ends the argument. He steps forward, Stormbreaker still stained, eyes hollowed by the knowledge of how close he came to failing. As he, the last son of Odin, reaches for the gauntlet, he begins to speak of Asgard's long, secret history with such relics: the Tesseract in Odin's vault, the Ether, the weapons his father locked away because he feared what lesser hands would do. If anyone must bear this, he says, it will be him, not Earth, not Stark. The boy who lost his crown and his people to the very force they've just slain will stand as guardian. Reluctantly, Strange yields. Tony rigs a containment field in the Benatar's hold, a crude cage of hard light and repulsor feedback, humming angrily as the stones press against it. Thor carries the gauntlet through one of Strange's brief portals and into the ship, muscles trembling under the weight that is more spiritual than physical. One by one, they board the patched-up craft. As the Benatar claws free of Titan's thin atmosphere, Strange lingers at the viewport, eyes on the shrinking corpse and the desolate landscape around it. He knows the real war now will not be fought in open skies, but in council chambers, laboratories, and shadows, over who commands the stones and what price they are willing to pay. Let's explore the depths of it as the first uneasy arguments begin the moment they set a course for home. The surviving Black Order and a leaderless war machine. Strange is not wrong. As the Benatar limps away from Titan, the camera for a moment abandons the broken heroes and pulls back into the cold dark where Thanos' shadow once stretched across half the stars. Now, that shadow fractures. On the fringes of known space, his war machine keeps moving, but the mind that bound it together is gone. A dreadnought above a burned-out moon finishes glassing a city, outriders still swarming over the ruins. Then, mid-attack, the order stream simply stops. No new coordinates, no whispered certainty pressing against the skulls of its captains. The beasts keep killing out of habit, but the officers feel it as he dies on Titan, a psychic presence, familiar and absolute, cut off mid-word. They wait for correction, none comes. The silence is worse than any command. Let's explore the depths of it as the scale of that silence becomes clear. Thanos' campaigns have already smashed the Nova Corps at Xandar, left the Kree Empire reeling from humiliations it cannot admit, culled half the population of dozens of worlds long before a snap was ever needed. Trade routes are broken. Refugee flotillas drift between systems that no longer have governments, only warlords. Even without the Gauntlet's final gesture, he has made the galaxy brittle. He knows that in such a brittle realm, the first hand to close around the stones will not just rule, it will define what order means for generations. Somewhere in that chaos, a single ship changes course. Its hull bears the same brutal geometry as the Sanctuary 2, but its bridge is quieter, more focused. At its center stands a lieutenant the films never showed. Supergiant, reimagined here as the mind Thanos trusted to sift madness from method. She feels the break in his consciousness as a physical wound. For a moment, she reaches out along the old channels, expecting his will to reassert itself, and dismiss this as a test. Nothing answers. This matter is not up for debate, she decides, though no one has spoken. Thanos is gone. The stones are not. As she studies holographic echoes of his last known path, Xandar, Nowhere, Nidavellir, Titan, she begins to see a different pattern. Her master chased balance with a zeal that made him inefficient, sentimental in his own monstrous way. Half measures, mercy of a sort. She can see the flaw now, and she is hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. Within the surviving Black Order, cracks widen. Corvus Glaive's fanatics on one cruiser chant that the great work must continue unchanged, that worlds must still be culled in Thanos' name until the ledger of life is balanced. Others, cooler, watch the same star maps and realize there is a better prize than martyrdom, the gauntlet itself, and an army already scattered across a wounded galaxy. Why obey a dead Titan when you can become something worse than him, more methodical, less emotional, unburdened by his twisted sense of mercy? On the edge of a red dwarf system, Supergiant stands alone at the viewport as he once did, hands clasped behind her back. She orders a course correction, voice calm, almost gentle. The warship pivots toward a set of coordinates already burned into every loyal officer's mind. Titan. They will arrive too late to save their master, but perhaps not too late to sift his corpse for secrets, to hunt for the gauntlet, or to track whoever dared to take it. And as the stars smear into lines, one question hangs in the dark. When this new hand finally closes around the stones, will the Avengers even see it coming? First Council in the sky, debating the fate of the stones. The Benatar cuts through the dark on failing engines, a wounded animal limping toward a blue and distant Earth. Inside, the air is stale with recycled breath, and something heavier, the low, ceaseless hum of the gauntlet locked in a containment field at the center of the common area, crackling now and then as if a storm were pacing in a cage. No one sits with their back to it, no one quite looks away. They gather because there is nothing else left to do. Tony leans against a bulkhead, armor stripped to the undersuit, eyes fixed on the golden claws of the gauntlet as he begins to speak. Strange stands opposite, cloak still and attentive, as he can see faint distortions of time curling around the stones. Thor takes the shadowed corner near the viewport, Stormbreaker across his knees, while Star-Lord, Drax, Mantis, and Nebula linger at the edges, a council of the unwilling. Tony goes first. Of course he does. He paces the floor nervously, rubbing his temples as he's tempted to take another swig from a dented canteen. Still, he forces himself to stay sharp as he lays out the problem in simple, earthbound terms. New York, Sokovia, now Wakanda and Titan. Every time the fight finds his planet, every time the stakes climb. Maybe, he argues, the only way this stops is if they stop pretending Earth is small. If they study the stones, learn them, build something that means the next Thanos dies before he ever reaches orbit. For a moment, no one answers. Then, Strange breaks the silence. His voice is level, but there is a strain in it, the sound of a man who has seen too much. These are not weapons, he reminds them. They are the bones of existence. Space, time, mind, soul, power, reality. Destroying them is not snapping a staff or melting down a sword. It is tearing pages from the universe's operating manual. Even Thanos, mad as he was, never tried to unmake the stones themselves. What happens if they succeed where he did not? Star-Lord scoffs, but there is no real heat in it. Hide them, he suggests. Scatter them again. Bury one in some Nova Corps vault. Toss another into a black hole. Out of sight, out of mind. Drax rumbles that they should keep them as a warning, a trophy that says no one should dare challenge the people who killed Thanos. Nebula, eyes on her father's ruined gauntlet, only mutters that deterrents invite challengers. She knows, she grew up as the example. The argument swells and breaks, philosophies clashing against the hum of the stones. Use them to undo Xandar, Vormir, the statesman. Refuse them, and accept that those dead stay dead. This matter is not up for debate, Strange insists at last, not the way Tony wants it. The fabric of reality is not a lab project. The pattern shatters when Thor finally speaks. His voice is quiet, rasped raw by smoke and failure. If there must be a bearer, he offers, let it be him, the last son of a dead realm. Already half a ghost, he knows what it is to carry a weapon that can damn him. Let the burden, and whatever secret doom comes with it, fall on his shoulders. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. No one agrees. No one refuses. The storm keeps humming between them, and as the Benatar limps closer to Earth, the question hangs unresolved. Are they about to deliver salvation to the planet below, or the seed of its final war? Landing in Wakanda, victory without celebration. The answer comes screaming through Wakanda's clouds. The Benatar tears the sky open, engines coughing fire as it limps through the shimmering blue dome that only just held back the end of the world. For a moment, every warrior on that scarred plane looks up with the same thought. Thanos found another way. Then the ship lists, shudders, and staggers lower, a wounded thing rather than a conquering spear. On the ground, dust still drifts from shattered trees and broken armor. Steve squints against the sun as he can see the silhouette, something in the tilt of its wings, tugging at a memory of New York and a portal that never quite left his nightmares. Beside him, Banner shields his eyes, the Hulk refusing to answer even now. He begins to whisper Tony's name under his breath, as if saying it could make the man appear. The Benatar hits the field hard. Metal screams, soil erupts, and Wakandan soldiers surge forward, spears lowered, Dora Milaje forming a living wall. The ramp hisses open. Rocket stumbles out first, fur matted with ash, muttering about nearly dying 3 different ways. Behind him, Nebula walks with the rigid care of someone who has seen too many crash sites end in ambush, and then Tony steps into the light. Silence folds over the battlefield. Steve's breath catches as he sees the weight carved into Tony's face, the armor half missing, the man inside somehow smaller and more dangerous all at once. They stop a few paces apart, no quips, no speeches, just strained eye contact that holds every unspoken argument from the Sokovia Accords to this very moment. Banner breaks first, a choked laugh of disbelief as he rushes forward, grabbing Tony's shoulder. "You're alive," he manages as he feels the cold edge of alien metal under his fingers. Tony only nods, eyes already sliding past them to the thing being dragged down the ramp, the gauntlet, still cracked, still humming, still terrible. Thor follows it, one hand on Stormbreaker, the other reaching for Rocket, and then Groot, pulling them both into a rough embrace that smells of smoke and failure. The boy tree looks up at him, and Thor knows he should say something triumphant. He doesn't. Wanda is already moving, sprinting through the crowd as he can see Vision upright, pale but standing, supported by Shuri and Okoye. She crashes into him, hands on his face, searching for the hole that should be there, and finding only scar and trembling vibranium. Relief hits her so hard, it is almost anger. T'Challa and Shuri do not waste the moment. Their eyes are on the gauntlet as Wakandan guards surround it, sonic spears leveled, vibranium restraints locking into place. Shuri's mind races through energy signatures, containment fields, the way each stone bends the scanners just by existing. To her, it is not just a weapon, it is a beacon, a bargaining chip that will call every hungry power in the cosmos to their doorstep once word escapes this valley. This matter is not up for debate, T'Challa says quietly, more to his sister than to the Avengers. It does not leave Wakanda without our consent. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. The story of Titan comes out in fragments. Tony speaks in clipped phrases about a ruined moon, about the boy from Queens turning to dust in his arms in a future that almost was. They gloss over Strange's visions, only admitting that the sorcerer saw countless failures, and that, this time, Thor's axe reached the head before the hand could close. They killed Thanos before he could snap. The relief that rolls through the Wakandans is real, but thin, stretched over the knowledge of how close they all came to vanishing. Later, the camera settles in the cool blue of a Wakandan lab. The gauntlet rests on a suspended cradle wrapped in layers of vibranium force fields and humming scanners. Each stone glows with its own terrible color, reflections warping across the gold. Around it stand Steve, Tony, Thor, T'Challa, Shuri, Wanda, Vision. Faces drawn, eyes hollow. Not one of them looks like a victor. The universe still exists, but as he studies the shifting lights, Tony begins to understand. This is not an ending, it is the opening move of a larger war. Let's explore the depths of it in the next part. Earth's first argument: who owns the end of the world? The throne room in Wakanda is quiet at first. The gauntlet sits on a raised slab of vibranium, still scorched, the stones pulsing with their own slow heartbeat as he can see reflected light crawl over the carved panthers and ancestral masks. Around it, the survivors gather, T'Challa on the throne, Shuri at his shoulder, Steve, Natasha, Banner, Thor, and Tony standing in a loose, uneasy ring that feels less like a council and more like a trial. T'Challa breaks the silence. His voice is calm, but there is steel beneath it as he studies the ruined metal. This was brought to Wakanda. Thanos bled our soil. My people died around this thing. We opened our borders for the world, and we paid in blood. Wakanda will not walk away now that the true danger has been revealed. For a moment, no one answers. The weight of the dead presses in from the battlefield outside. Shuri steps forward. She begins to circle the slab, hands clasped behind her back, eyes narrowed in clinical fascination and quiet fury. "We are already custodians of the Mind Stone," she says, nodding toward Vision, pale but alive on a nearby stretcher. "We have the only facility that can contain this safely. The gauntlet, the stones, they stay here, under Wakandan science, under Wakandan protection." Tony exhales, short and sharp, as he rubs his face. He knows this pattern. Power, borders, promises that sound righteous until they don't. "Right, except this thing just rang a dinner bell across the galaxy," he snaps. "We've had New York, Sokovia, now Wakanda. Every time the stones touch Earth, we get an invasion. You really want one nation sitting on all of that?" His gaze flicks from the throne to the glowing gems. "We need a coalition. Stark Tech, your lab, and yeah, maybe the UN breathing down our necks so nobody decides they're suddenly a god." Steve's jaw tightens as he listens. He can see the fault lines forming already, borders being drawn around something that should never belong to anyone. "Tony's right about one thing," he says quietly. "No one should hold that power, not a king, not the Avengers. We were never meant to rule." Natasha folds her arms, eyes on the stones, voice low. "Then we don't rule, we destroy them, or scatter them so far no one can ever put them together again." Banner shifts uneasily. If we even can destroy them, he mutters. These things are the building blocks of reality. Break them wrong, we might tear the universe apart. Thor's fingers flex around Stormbreaker's haft. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. If they must be guarded, he rumbles. Asgard has experience with such relics, or what remains of it. The argument spikes, voices overlapping, each of them reaching for control or for escape from the decision itself. This matter is not up for debate. Each of them thinks in their own way, but none can say it aloud without starting a different kind of war. The noise dies only when the air chills and the lights bend. Strange steps from a ripple of orange, his expression drawn. For a moment, he only looks at the stones, as if measuring them against something only he remembers. Whatever you choose, he says, you must choose now. The universe will not politely wait while Earth holds a family meeting over godhood. He turns toward the doors, cloak stirring. Because something out there already knows Thanos failed, and as he speaks, the room seems to shrink around the gauntlet, as if the next knock on Wakanda's door is already on its way. Pattern break, a world that never knows the blip. Outside that shrinking room in Wakanda, the world does what it always does in the aftermath of a miracle it doesn't understand. Morning comes in New York with the glow of a dozen screens. Cable news loops shaky footage of a Titanic ship over the African savannah, grainy stills of a purple giant striding through dust and smoke, and a single arresting image, a beam of lightning and something falling. Headlines call it an alien invasion repelled by Earth's mightiest heroes. Analysts argue over whether it was an act of war or a one-off incursion. No one talks about half their family turning to ash because no one does. In this world, there is no blip. No empty classrooms, no abandoned cars on bridges, no 5-year scar carved into every conversation. There are no support circles in church basements, trading stories of the vanished, no monuments etched with millions of names, no children growing up with the word dusting as part of their vocabulary. There is only a familiar, queasy relief, another near miss, another New York, another Sokovia, filed away as proof that the age of heroes has not ended, and that catastrophe can be survived if one more impossible man or woman stands up at the right time. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. That thought, or some version of it, moves through presidents, prime ministers, and kings as emergency sessions flare to life. At the UN, delegates shout behind closed doors, demanding answers from Wakanda, from Stark Industries, from anyone who can be blamed. Intelligence chiefs pass around classified satellite images of a crater, of shattered alien metal, of a limp massive body briefly caught on camera before being covered. As he reads the first reports, one director can see the true question forming under the official ones. Who has the weapon that killed a god? For a moment, the pattern interrupts itself. Not in a war room, but in a kitchen. Pepper stands in the doorway of Tony's workshop, arms folded, eyes red but steady. He's alive. He made it back from Titan, armor scorched, voice hoarse, fingers shaking as he pulls up schematics to distract himself from what almost happened. She listens, then cuts him off. Relief curdles into fury as she lists every broken promise, every near death. This matter is not up for debate, she tells him. If he wants a future, he has to live long enough to see it. On a quiet farm, Clint Barton never becomes Ronin. He's there when his kids ask what happened in Wakanda, when Laura squeezes his hand a little too tightly as the news replays that purple face. He knows something worse almost happened, even if he can't name it. In San Francisco, Scott Lang grumbles about house arrest, then finally steps out into a world that never lost half its people. He never vanishes into the quantum realm at the exact moment a snap echoes across existence, because that echo never comes. Life goes on. Traffic jams, school runs, late bills, small joys. Yet under it all, a thin, taut wire hums. Governments draft secret resolutions to demand access to Wakandan technology to whatever force hurled a storm of power through that alien titan. Some whisper that if Earth can wield such a thing once, it must be able to do so again. Let's explore the depths of it. By stopping the blip, Thor has not delivered peace. He has preserved the same fragile tension that has lingered since the Chitauri fell from the sky, a tension between a small blue world and a vast, indifferent cosmos. Only now, 6 stones sit on that world's soil, and somewhere, far from the cameras and the speeches, hands are already reaching for them. Vision and the Mind Stone, a living argument. In the quiet that follows the speeches and the secret arguments, we return to the one place on Earth that has already treated an Infinity Stone as something more than a weapon. Deep beneath Wakanda's sunlit fields, Shuri stands over Vision's body, surrounded by hard light displays and threads of golden code. She has not failed this time. She has only been forced to stop halfway. She begins moving through the lattice of his mind with the same impatient precision we saw before, but the battlefield did not tear him away. Instead, as he lies there, she has managed to partially decouple the Mind Stone's functions, rerouting neural pathways, building synthetic bridges where once there was only raw cosmic fire. He is weakened, his skin still that pallid, almost waxen hue, yet he is not dead, and Shuri, for a moment, allows herself the smallest smile. This matter is not up for debate. She will not lose another patient to someone else's war. When Vision awakens, it is to the soft hum of Wakandan machinery and the distant murmur of a world arguing about him. The first thing he feels is absence. The stone in his forehead still glows, but its song is muffled, as if wrapped in gauze. He knows, before anyone tells him, that something fundamental has changed. Then, the news comes in pieces. Thanos is dead. The snap never happened. The universe lives. Yet the Mind Stone, the thing that birthed his consciousness, is now one of 6 pieces of a cosmic arsenal being discussed on screens and in councils as if it were a controversial bill. He can see footage, anchors debating stone regulation, generals speaking of deterrence, politicians invoking security and sovereignty. The boy who was once Jarvis, then something more, listens as he is reduced to a strategic asset, and in that moment, he begins to articulate the dilemma no one wants to face. He is an individual with thoughts and hopes, and the quiet, stubborn love he carries for Wanda, but he is also a vessel for something unimaginably dangerous. Destroying the stones may mean killing him. Preserving them means living as a perpetual target and temptation. Who has the right to decide which fate he carries? Wanda stands at his bedside, fingers hovering over his hand, as if afraid that even touch might undo Shuri's delicate work. She remembers the feel of his skull breaking under her power on that other battlefield, the way his eyes met hers as he asked her to do it. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again, and neither is she. Now that they have survived the war, she refuses any plan that speaks of acceptable losses and necessary sacrifices, with the same cool detachment she once heard from Hydra scientists. Her grief has hardened into something sharp. When advisors suggest that perhaps the safest course is to dismantle the Mind Stone entirely, her voice cuts through the room. Vision is not a containment unit. He is not a bomb to be defused. He is a person. For a moment, even the most hawkish fall, silent under the weight of her fury, and it is Vision, not Wanda, who finally breaks that silence. He sits up, still unsteady, the yellow light in his forehead pulsing in time with his thoughts. Perhaps, he suggests, there is a compromise. The stones are concentrated singularities of power, but power can be transformed, separated, diffused into safer forms, scattered through technology, enchantment, or even living hosts who consent to bear a fraction of the burden. It would mean no single gauntlet, no single tyrant able to rewrite reality with a clenched fist, yet his voice lowers as he continues. Any attempt to tamper with the stones at that scale will not go unnoticed. Thanos was not the only one who watched the rise and fall of civilizations. There are beings far beyond him, entities for whom the Infinity Stones are not myths, but instruments. If Earth dares to unmake or redistribute what they consider fundamental, those eyes will turn here. Let's explore the depths of it. In saving Vision and keeping the stones, the Avengers may have just lit a beacon that calls something even worse to their door. Strange's hidden calculus, why he feared this future Strange, has seen universes burn because someone celebrated too early. On Titan, as he watches Thor's axe cleave through Thanos' skull and the gauntlet fall dead and silent, there is no triumph in him. There is only the cold recognition that this is not the future he chose. Later, back at Kamar Taj, he stands before a recording crystal, the air still humming with residual eldritch energy as he begins to speak. Wong listens in the doorway, arms folded. The boyish arrogance Strange once carried long since stripped away. In thousands of futures, Strange admits, Thanos dies early, Stormbreaker, Wanda, a stray missile. It doesn't matter. What matters is who comes after. He can see Wong's frown deepen as he continues. Dormammu, celestials stirred from their distant watch, variants of a man called Kang, who move before the timeline has hardened. In those branches, the stones do not rest. They are seized, systematized, weaponized. He begins looking through ancient scrolls as he speaks, fingers tracing sigils that predate the sanctum. In some visions, Dormammu learns from his defeat and reaches for the Time Stone the instant it's untethered from Thanos. In others, a celestial hand closes around the Power Stone and redraws entire star maps in a single, dispassionate gesture. And in the worst, Strange knows, early Kangs step through seams in reality, each armed with the knowledge of 1 trillion dead timelines, each convinced he can do what Thanos could not. For a moment, the Sorcerer Supreme falls silent. Then, this matter is not up for debate. A quick victory was never safety, it was an invitation. Let's explore the depths of it. In the canon he allowed, the blip was not an accident of failure, it was a controlled catastrophe. The snap forged something terrible and uniquely useful, a shared wound, guilt that breaks Tony's certainty, loss that shatters Thor's vanity, a universe traumatized enough that, when the chance finally comes, they do not argue to keep the stones. They agree to destroy them, to end the game, rather than simply win this round. Strange had seen too many futures where the Avengers win cleanly and then hesitate. Governments demand the stones for security. Gods and kings insist they can be trusted. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. In this altered timeline, there is no 5-year scar, no empty chairs and support groups. Vision lives. Wanda does not break. Tony does not lose a daughter he adores. It is merciful, it is brighter, and that, Strange fears, is precisely the problem. Without the blip, Earth's leaders do not feel the same horror of absence. Thor's redemption is not born from utter failure. The Avengers are lauded as saviors holding 6 miracles in their hands. As he studies them, Strange can see the pattern forming: committees, accords, secret projects. A slow slide into benevolent hoarding that becomes anything but benevolent the moment the next crisis arrives. So he records a final warning, voice low. Thor's better aim saved lives, he concedes, but the futures where Thanos dies here, on Wakanda's soil, are the ones where the stones endure. And in all of those, something worse eventually comes to claim them. He turns off the crystal, leaving Wong with a single chilling question. If this was the wrong victory, what price will the universe pay to correct it? Thor, as reluctant keeper, the new All-Father's burden. The warning from the future fades, and for a moment, Wakanda is quiet again. Night has settled fully over the Golden City, the hum of its shields reduced to a distant whisper. On a high balcony overlooking Shuri's lab, Thor sits alone, Stormbreaker resting against the stone, the axe's edge catching the faint blue of the Kimoyo lights below. He can see the reinforced chamber where the gauntlet is stored, buried under layers of vibranium and force fields. Guarded by Dora Milaje, who pretend not to watch him, they all know the truth. Of everyone on this planet, of everyone in this sector of the galaxy, he is the only one who can touch that thing without turning to ash. It is a simple fact, and still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. The universe survived Thanos. Now it waits on the temper of a single Asgardian. As he stares, the memories refuse to stay buried, the crack of Asgard breaking apart under Hela's wrath, Heimdall's last breath on the ruined ship, Loki's body going limp in his arms, the boy who once played tricks on him now a corpse at his feet. He failed them all, then failed half the universe when he went for the chest first. Stormbreaker through the head bought him redemption, or so everyone insists, but he knows it is not that simple. In his bones, he begins to feel it as a debt. Asgard destroyed, the refugees scattered, the realms thrown into chaos. He owes them something. He owes everyone something. Soft footsteps approach. T'Challa joins him at the railing, cloak stirring in the breeze. For a time, they say nothing. The king follows Thor's gaze to the lab. It is safer there than in most places, he offers, but not safe from everyone. Thor's jaw tightens. They expect me to decide, he says. Who may touch it? Who may not? My father kept such things in a vault. Cursed blades, the Tesseract. Half of it I never understood. Now I am to be, what? Judge? Jailer? T'Challa studies him, then answers carefully. You are a warrior being asked to guard a throne no one should sit upon. This matter is not up for debate, but that does not make it just. The words hit with the weight of old oaths. It is the same burden that once dragged Ned Stark from Winterfell to King's Landing, a man of action forced into politics, handed secrets and powers he never wanted, knowing that every choice would be a compromise, and every compromise a stain on his soul. Thor was forged to swing hammers, not weigh realities. The pattern breaks as another presence steps from the shadows. Steve, sleeves rolled up, dirt still under his nails from helping rebuild the field hospital. You're not alone in this, he says quietly. We'll make the calls together. Thor almost laughs, but there is no humor in it. You are a good man, Rogers, but you cannot lift that gauntlet. If someone must wield it, in some last wretched moment, it will be me. He turns back to the lab, voice low, the vow settling over him like a crown he never asked for. Whatever it does to me, body, mind, all of it, better that I break than the universe does. Let's explore the depths of it. In choosing this, Thor does more than guard the stones. He chains himself to them, and in doing so, he quietly sets the stage for the next great crisis, because power like that never stays unchallenged for long. Tony Stark's temptation, armor around the world, and time. On the far side of Wakanda, as medpods hum and the battlefield cools, Tony Stark finds something even louder than the memory of Thanos' hand closing around his throat. The stones won't stop singing, not to him. He stands in Shuri's lab, or what's left of it, the walls still scorched from the Outriders' last push. Holographic projections flicker above a cracked console. Raw scans of the gauntlet's residue, the color-coded ghosts of space, mind, time, and the rest, drifting in layered spectrums. For a moment, he just stares. He can see the Chitauri invasion reflected in every spike and waveform, the nuke he sent through that portal, the helplessness that has hunted him in every nightmare since. He begins pulling the data apart with that familiar, manic precision. Here, a trace of the Space Stone's signature, warping local gravity. There, the Mind Stone's pattern, threading through neural fields. And in each curve and pulse, he knows there is an answer. An end to the question that has been eating him alive since New York. How do you make sure this never happens again? In his head, the lab falls away. A speculative montage takes its place. A global defense grid anchored by the Space Stone, encasing Earth in an invisible lattice that reroutes any hostile vessel into empty void. Predictive algorithms, his old Ultron protocols reborn, but refined, fused with the Mind Stone's ability to read intention, flagging threats before they act. Time-locked safe zones powered by the Time Stone, bubbles of frozen chronology around vulnerable cities, where no bomb ever detonates and no child ever watches the sky burn. It is horrifying, it is beautiful, it is everything he has ever wanted. Pepper finds him there, lit only by the blue of the projections. She doesn't need to raise her voice. You promised, Tony. After this fight, we walk away. He doesn't turn. Yeah, well, the universe didn't get that memo. His jaw tightens as he zooms in on a time stone spike. As long as these things exist, someone's going to reach for them. Walking away, that's just leaving them for the next Thanos. Or someone worse, someone less scrupulous. This matter is not up for debate, she says, but the tremor in her voice betrays her. He can see the fear there, not of aliens, but of him. Banner steps in as the reluctant conscience. He studies the same scans, shoulders slumped. Tony, even cataloging this is dangerous. You start building around it, you're making blueprints, weapons, tech that Hydra, or the government, or whoever comes after Thanos, will kill to steal. We don't end his legacy, we franchise it. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. The words echo in Tony's skull as he pretends to concede, powering down the displays under Pepper's gaze. Out loud, he agrees to focus on cleanup, on healing. Internally, another decision crystallizes. Sharp as shrapnel, he will build a contingency, quietly, using the data they already have. A way to neutralize the stones if they resurface, or seize control if someone else tries to wield them. Not a suit of armor around the world this time, but around reality itself. Let's explore the depths of it. In that moment, Tony Stark steps onto a path that will put his paranoia on a collision course with the team's ideals, and the next threat to the stones may not come from the stars at all. Wanda, grief deferred, loving a man and hating a stone. Tony's paranoia turns outward to systems and safeguards. Wanda's turns inward to one point of golden light. While the others argue over protocols and contingencies, she sits in a quiet room in Wakanda, watching Vision heal. The synthetic tissue is knitting, the vibranium plates reforming, but her gaze never truly leaves the stone. Her hand rests over it, not quite touching, feeling the hum through the air. For a moment, the present dissolves. She is back on that battlefield, wind screaming, earth tearing apart as he begged her to do it. Vision's voice, calm and breaking, telling her it was all right, her power burning through her veins as she began to unmake the thing in his head, and him with it. She remembers the taste of ash in her mouth when it finally shattered, only for Thanos to rewind time and take it anyway. Here, in this world, that horror never completes. Stormbreaker falls first, Thanos dies, the snap never comes, but the memory of being asked to kill the man she loves does not care about altered timelines. So when Shuri and Banner step in, talking about energy signatures and unique access, Wanda's jaw tightens. They say the Mind Stone is an asset, a key to understanding the others, perhaps the only way to build the armor around reality Tony wants. She hears none of the hope, only the threat. To them, it is a resource. To her, it is the knife that was once placed in her hand and angled toward Vision's heart. She is grateful still that she was spared that final choice, that she did not have to watch the light go out of his eyes by her own doing. Yet the stone's continued existence feels like an accusation. As he smiles weakly and tells her he is fine, that he knows they will figure it out, she can see another future coiling behind his words. Councils and committees deciding what risks are acceptable and who must pay them. Outside the room, the debates grow bolder. Some speak of using the stones to fix things, undo Sokovia, bring back the dead from New York, from Lagos, from the Chitauri invasion. There is a tremor of temptation in the air, the sense that if they already hold this power, why not correct every past mistake? Let's explore the depths of it. In those conversations, Wanda hears a world that will never allow her and Vision to simply exist. They will be instruments, levers to pull whenever someone decides the cost is justified. This matter is not up for debate, one general snaps in the hall, arguing that the Mind Stone must be weaponized before the next Thanos appears. The phrase lodges in her chest. She thinks of the Avengers, of governments, of anyone who might decide that sacrificing one synthezoid and the woman who loves him is a fair price for peace. The core wound, being asked to trade love for the greater good, does not heal just because the universe survived. So, that night, as he rests and the stone glows softly under her palm, she makes a promise. Her voice is barely above a whisper, but the resolve in it is iron. If they come for you again, if they reach for this stone, I won't be the martyr they expect. She will not stand still and let the world decide. And if the political struggle over the stones turns against them, the next reality that breaks may not be the one Tony is planning for. Global powers. Stir the UNSHIEL. D's ghosts, and Wakanda Wanda's promise hangs in the air over Wakanda, but far from the red glow of the Mind Stone, another kind of storm gathers. Not energy, not magic, procedure, paper. Men and women in suits who have never seen an outrider up close, but who can smell a shift in power from across an ocean. Let's explore the depths of it. In New York, beneath the bright blue emblem of the United Nations, a closed session is convened under emergency protocols. The cameras are off, translators are dismissed. Only a handful remain as representatives from the United States, Russia, China, the European bloc, and a dozen others face a live, secure projection from Wakanda. T'Challa stands flanked by Okoye and Shuri, the weight of a dead titan and a silent gauntlet pressing on his shoulders, even from half a world away. They demand an accounting. How was the alien incursion repelled? What technology could wound a being wielding 6 cosmic artifacts? Who controls that weapon now? A French ambassador leans forward as he speaks, invoking Sokovia, New York, Lagos. Each disaster a stone placed carefully on the scale. The implication is clear. The world has tolerated Avengers and their crises, but this is different. This is not a hammer or a shield. This is something that rewrites what power even means. T'Challa's answers are precise, diplomatic, and to those who know him, deliberately incomplete. Wakanda contributed forces. The Avengers fought bravely. The threat has been neutralized. He can see the way they trade glances, the way a Russian delegate's pen taps faster as he mentions unique Wakandan capabilities. For a moment, he considers telling them everything, trusting an open council. Then, he remembers Killmonger's vision of weapons on every border and knows this matter is not up for debate. In the shadows left behind by SHIELD's fall, other eyes are already watching. A reconstituted task force operating out of a nondescript office in London sifts intercepted Wakandan transmissions. A name appears again and again: Gauntlet. Files once stamped with the SHIELD eagle are pulled from cold storage, their corners marked with another symbol beneath the dust. Hydra did not die so easily. To them, the Infinity Stones are not a warning. They are the endgame SHIELD never allowed them to play. Natasha and Steve move through this new world as ghosts. No official title, no clear mandate. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. He begins tracing leaks, quietly visiting old safe houses, burning paper trails before they can harden into evidence. She scrubs satellite footage, corrupts files, loses sensor readings from Wakanda's soil. As he listens to intercepted chatter about the Wakandan device, he knows the clock is already ticking. Once the word gauntlet reaches the wrong ears, every warlord, every general, every frightened president will start dreaming of closing their fist around the universe. Wakanda feels the pressure tighten. Trade partners hint at reviews of aid packages. A UN resolution draft circulates in back rooms, suggesting inspections, oversight, perhaps even a peacekeeping mission to ensure alien technology is properly safeguarded. Okoye offers to prepare for the worst, to plan for the day foreign boots try to cross their border. Shuri jokes for a moment about what would happen if she simply turned the gauntlet into scrap. No one laughs. Far from Wakanda, in a secure facility whose coordinates have been erased from every public map, a classified report lands on a polished desk. The header still bears the ghost of SHIELD's logo under a new, sanitized insignia. The unknown figure reading it does not react as he reaches the final page. He only circles 2 words in red ink: Infinity Stones. Then, with the calm of someone who has waited years for the board to reset, he begins making plans to acquire them at any cost. The war for the universe may be over, but the war for what replaces Thanos has only just begun. Cosmic eyes turn to Earth, Kree, Nova, and the Collector. News of Thanos' death does not begin with trumpets. It starts as a rumor in a smuggler's den at the edge of Kree space, a half-drunk pilot insisting the Mad Titan fell on a green world called Earth. From there, it spreads, distorted and doubted, yet persistent, as he swears he saw the last jump signature of the Sanctuary 2 flicker and die above Wakanda's sky. On Hala, Kree tacticians listen in silence as intercepted broadcasts confirm it. Thanos' armies are in disarray. His lieutenants are dead or scattered. For a moment, the war room is utterly still, every officer remembering worlds that bent the knee when the Titan's shadow passed. Relief is not what they feel, it is calculation. If one insignificant planet felled the Butcher of Xandar, then the balance of power has shifted in ways no one can yet measure. Far away, on what remains of a Nova outpost clinging to the ruins of Xandar's orbit, surviving officers stand before a fractured holomap. The icon that once marked Thanos' roaming slaughter simply fades. One of them, armor scorched and patched, exhales a broken laugh. The boy who watched his home burn can see the poetic justice. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. 6 stones together, after everything, on a world with no central galactic oversight? He knows that is not victory, it is a countdown. In the dark menagerie of nowhere, the news arrives in a different form. A trembling broker brings a data slate to a private vault, where the Collector's remaining attendants sift through the ashes of their master's empire. Whether Tannelir Tyvan survived the attack, or only his network did, the reaction is the same as he begins parsing the reports. 6 singularities, confirmed, all manifested on Earth within the span of hours. For a moment, the enormity of it eclipses even his greed. Then, the old obsession returns. He has spent millennia tracing fragments of these artifacts through myth and ruin. Now they sit, together, on a backwater planet that has already repelled Loki, Ultron, and Thanos himself. On Hala, the debate turns sharper. Admirals argue that if humans master the stones, the Kree Empire will kneel to primitives. Others warn that any assault risks drawing the full wrath of beings who can kill a Titan. This matter is not up for debate. One Supreme Intelligence proxy finally intones. Contingency fleets are drafted. Covert retrieval units are proposed. The word Earth becomes synonymous with threat. The Nova survivors choose another path. They sketch plans for a multilateral council. Kree, Skrull, surviving Xandarians, perhaps even Asgardians, convening to contain or dismantle the stones before another madman rises. But they have no fleet, no world mind, no authority to compel compliance. Their proposal becomes a plea cast into the void, and somewhere on the fringes of mapped space, one ship answers. A lone captain watches the reports in silence, seeing the same pattern he has chased for years. Let's explore the depths of it from his view. Every empire hesitated when Thanos rose. No one moved until it was too late. He He can see history repeating on a smaller, more dangerous scale. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. Engines burn. The course is set for a pale blue world, whose name he has heard whispered with equal parts awe and fear: Earth. If the universe is to avoid another Thanos, someone must reach the stones before the humans decide what to do with them. Guardians adrift, a team without a quest. They reach Earth on borrowed time and borrowed purpose. The war is over, Thanos is dead, and yet for a moment none of them can quite explain why they are still here. The Guardians linger on a planet that was never meant to be more than a pit stop. Trees that do not talk sway over Wakandan hills. Music drifts from Shuri's lab, but no one dances the way they do on the Milano. Star-Lord leans against a balcony of carved vibranium, watching a sunset that refuses to sync with any of his old mixtapes, and he knows he is out of place. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again, not when 6 stones and a dead tyrant have turned Earth into the new center of the universe. Peter's laughter has an edge now. He jokes with Rhodey, flirts badly with Okoye, pretends the Terran air doesn't feel heavier than Xandar's, but the relief sits beside something else. He remembers Titan, remembers the way his hands shook on Thanos' jaw, the way Tony's eyes burned into him. This time, he didn't ruin the plan. This time, Thor aimed for the head, and the snap never came. Yet Gamora is still gone, traded for a soul stone that now rests in a Wakandan vault behind layers of tech and tradition. As he stares at the sealed chamber, he begins to understand that victory can feel a lot like theft. Rocket prowls the perimeter with a tablet in one paw and a rifle in the other. He can see the sky crowded with ships that will never arrive now, orders that will never be given. Thanos' armies are scattering, their command structure severed in an instant. Strongholds from Sanctuary 2 to Forgotten Moons are suddenly leaderless. He mutters to Nebula as he works, listing off sectors where Outriders will eat everything in sight without someone forcing them into formation. Liberated worlds might celebrate tonight, but tomorrow they will wake to a galaxy with no unifying terror, only 1,000 smaller ones waiting to bloom. Nebula listens, arms folded, gaze fixed on the vault that holds the stones. For the first time, her father cannot reach her, and yet his shadow has never felt longer. This matter is not up for debate, she tells Rocket. Someone will come for those stones. Kree warlords, surviving Black Order fanatics, new monsters who think they can do it better than Thanos. Earth is already arguing over who should guard them. She has heard the raised voices in council rooms, the word weapon spoken too easily. So the Guardians argue in turn. Stay and help these Avengers manage power they barely understand, or go back into the dark and clean up the mess Thanos left behind. Mantis, for a moment, presses her hand to Peter's shoulder and feels his guilt and his stubborn hope twist together. Groot, taller now, simply says, "I am Groot," and the boy hears the question in it. Where do they belong if their quest is over? They choose a compromise that satisfies no one and everyone. They will leave, but not far. The Benatar will orbit on the edge of the system, close enough to answer a distress call, far enough that the stars still feel honest. Rocket programs an alert keyed to any surge from the stones. If these humans prove as reckless as every other species he has met, they will be back before the dust settles. As their ship rises through Earth's atmosphere, Peter casts one last look down at the blue world, clutching its impossible prizes. He can see Thor on a Wakandan terrace, head bowed, and Strange watching the sky as if counting futures again. Somewhere beyond the moon, a different kind of hunter is already changing course, drawn by rumors of 6 lights in the dark, and the Guardians will not be the only ones answering that call. Pattern shift, a slower, colder war, for the gauntlet months pass. Not years, not an age of legends, just long enough for adrenaline to sour into doubt, and for victory to start feeling suspiciously like a stalemate. The gauntlet never leaves Wakandan soil. Shuri's lab becomes a sanctum, and a prison both. Its vibranium shutters sealed, its air thick with the hum of alien power. Dora Milaje stand at every entrance, energy shields nested inside energy shields. On paper, it is simple. The most advanced nation on Earth will guard the most dangerous weapon in existence. In practice, every day the gauntlet stays there. The world's orbit tilts a little closer to Wakanda. Vision moves, because he must. He begins in Wakanda, repaired in stages under Shuri's careful gaze, the Mind Stone pulsing faintly as he relearns how to stand without collapsing the systems inside him. Then, at Stark's insistence and Strange's cold agreement, he is relocated in quiet rotations, an underground bunker in upstate New York, a hidden facility near New Asgard's half-built docks, a secure wing of Camartage that hums with wards older than most nations. Each move creates a new center of gravity, a new rumor, a new point of failure. There are no armies massing at borders now. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. That thought haunts every leader who survived Thanos. So the fighting changes shape. Satellites are recalibrated to watch Wakanda, SHIELD. Remnants and Wakandan war dogs intercept the same whispered transmissions. Kree and surviving Xandarian agents trade information in shadowed cantinas about 6 stones locked on a backwater world. For a moment, it feels less like peace and more like the quiet before a coup. Inside the Avengers, the fracture lines are softer, but no less real. Steve argues that the stones should be scattered, hidden where no single hand can reach them. Tony, staring at schematics lit by the glow of the Mind Stone's readings, insists centralization means control, and control is the only way to avoid another Titan. Strange, who can see too many futures and trusts almost none of them, repeats one phrase with weary finality: "This matter is not up for debate. The stones must be protected, not used." Yet protection itself has become an ideology. Heroes built for clean impact, Thor's hammer, Wanda's red storm, T'Challa's charge, find themselves trapped in conference rooms instead. Thor sits through UN briefings, where delegates mispronounce Nidavellir while arguing over jurisdiction. Natasha spends more time vetting security clearances than leading missions. Even Peter, the boy who once swung between skyscrapers, now waits outside locked doors as adults decide who owns the universe. The pattern has shifted. No snapping fingers, no portals of light, no single battle to win or lose. Just a long, simmering contest of wills where a misplaced word in a diplomatic cable might be deadlier than an outrider swarm. Let's explore the depths of it. In a war without open war, who even notices the moment the line is finally crossed? A secret plan to unmake the stones. That line is crossed far from any council chamber, in places that were never meant to matter to the fate of all things. In a dim Wakandan lab that still smells of burned metal and ozone. In a stone-walled library where candles gutter, as if nervous, Wong closes the door of the Camartage annex with a soft thud, sealing out the distant murmur of apprentices. For a moment, he simply studies the others around the low table. Strange, shoulders tight, Banner, eyes still bruised by sleeplessness, Shuri, fingers already drumming an impatient rhythm against a slab of raw vibranium. He knows this is not a sanctioned council. It is something quieter and far more dangerous. They have been meeting like this for weeks, slipping between Wakanda and Camartage through hidden portals, timing their absences so no one can see the pattern. In Shuri's lab, holograms of the stone's energy signatures flicker beside readouts of gamma spikes and vibranium harmonics. In the library, ancient vellum lies open next to Stark tablets. The boy's sleek designs a jarring counterpoint to ink that speaks of celestials, titans, and the first scattering of primordial light. Strange turns a page with surgical care. He begins tracing a sigil that appears in 3 separate grimoires, and disturbingly, in a half-corrupted Kree star chart recovered from the fringes of Xandar's ruins. The pattern repeats wherever the Infinity Stones are mentioned together, not as a blessing, but as a warning. The universe can endure them. It was not meant to endure them gathered. Banner stands at the window of Shuri's lab, watching the faint shimmer where the Wakandan shield once stood. He can see, in his mind, a ghost, the wave of power that never came, the snap-adjacent surge that should have ripped across the sky when Thanos closed his fist. His instruments still recorded the attempt, a spike of energy that flared, then collapsed the instant Stormbreaker struck the Titan's skull. It is a scar in the data, proof that reality itself flinched. This matter is not up for debate, Strange says, when Shuri challenges the secrecy. His voice is calm, but there is steel beneath. If we open this to every government, every king, we guarantee paralysis. Or worse, someone decides they want a stone for themselves. Shuri's eyes sharpen. Still, she was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again, knowledge locked away until it is too late. And when only a few people hoard the truth, what happens then? I have seen what my ancestors hid under this mountain. The world paid the price for our silence. Wong mediates with the weight of Kamartaj's long memory. He reminds them of sorcerers who once tried to bind the stones, of empires that rose and fell chasing fragments of their power. Each story ends the same way, with ruin or disappearance, or both. Yet the work continues. They map the near snap's energy residue against vibranium's resonant frequencies. Banner feeds in gamma models, muttering that the same radiation that birthed the Hulk might, if properly contained, anchor a dispersal event. Strange sketches a ritual lattice that could, in theory, pry the stone's essences apart and bleed them back into the fabric of the universe, returning mind to thought, power to stars, reality to possibility. Imagine it, Banner says. No gauntlet, no more ultimate weapon for the next Thanos who thinks he can do it better. Imagine who hunts us if they learn we're trying, Wong answers. In the end, they choose the smaller horror. They agree to proceed in secret, to build a device and a spell that might unmake what everyone else now calls their last insurance policy. Let's explore the depths of it. In saving the universe from the stones, what happens when the universe decides it wanted them after all? The first theft attempt, Shadows in Wakanda. The universe thinks it has survived its executioner, but the first sign that it has simply traded one kind of doom for another comes not with an army, but with a shadow in Wakanda. It begins on a night so still, the rebuilt shields hum louder than the wind. The golden barrier arcs over the city. The lab sits buried beneath layers of vibranium and pride, and for a moment, Shuri allows herself to believe in her own work. The gauntlet rests in a containment field of blue light, stripped from Thanos' dead hand, its stones cycling through muted colors as he begins running diagnostics no one on Earth has names for yet. Far above, something flickers. Not a ship, a distortion. 3 human silhouettes fall through the clouds wrapped in cloaking mesh that bends light and heat. They hit the outer jungle with barely a sound. They move with the rhythm of people who have drilled this path 100 times on a map. 2 forward, 1 rear security, each step matching gaps in Dora patrol routes they should not know exist. They pass the first perimeter sensors because someone has already rewritten those lines of code. They ghost through a service tunnel entrance because someone has already copied the key. Their rifles are compact, their armor matte, their accents hushed and mismatched as they murmur into sub-vocals. This is not an alien vanguard. These are special forces, pieced together from places that pretend not to work together. Inside the lab, the lights dim for a scheduled power reroute. Shuri frowns as she watches a status window blink out half a second too early. She knows her systems. She knows when they are lying. As she taps a bead, a silent alarm jumps straight to Okoye's spear and Natasha's borrowed Kimoyo beads. This matter is not up for debate. If the gauntlet is threatened, they move. The infiltrators breach the final corridor. The containment field glows at the end, the stones pulsing slow, as if they can see the hands reaching for them. One operative raises a device shaped to clamp over the gauntlet, a portable Faraday cage built from stolen theory. He is 2 steps from history when Okoye hits him. Her spear slams him into the wall, vibranium ringing. Natasha crashes into the second with a baton crack that drops his cloaking mesh in a shower of sparks. The third swings a blade. Shuri ducks, answers with a sonic gauntlet blast that folds him over. The fight is brief but vicious, the kind of close-quarters chaos where one lucky shot could end the world. When the last intruder's mask is torn away, there are no ridges, no purple skin, just a sweating human face, eyes blown wide with a mix of zeal and fear. Under interrogation, he breaks faster than Okoye expected, not from pain, but from certainty. He begins to talk about a mandate, about back channels and black budgets, about people who have seen what one mad titan did with the stones and refuse to let a king and a handful of broken heroes decide their fate. "We don't serve a flag," he rasps. "We serve survival. No one trusts you to hold that kind of power. Not Wakanda, not the Avengers, not after Sokovia, not after Lagos, not after New York. We're not the only ones. The schematics are already out. Everyone's building a plan." Shuri feels the blood drain from her face as he lists details he should never have. The gauntlet's containment frequency, the lab's power redundancies, the exact depth of the vault. Someone has copied her work. Someone has sold it. Multiple someones. T'Challa stands at the glass, watching the stones turn slowly in their field. He can see the reflection of his own crown in the warped surface, and for a moment, he remembers the promise he made to open Wakanda to the world as a sanctuary, a place of healing after centuries of hiding. "Sanctuary," he says quietly. "No, that is gone." Okoye waits. Shuri stares at the schematics now flagged in her system, each ping a reminder of how far the leak has spread. "We are the front line now," T'Challa finishes. "Not against armies in the field, but against ghosts in our corridors and hands in our code." Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. His jaw tightens. Prepare for more visitors. The first came in shadows. The next will not come alone, because somewhere, as he speaks, another set of eyes studies the same stolen plans, and decides that if Thanos failed with the stones, they will not. Thor's test, touching the gauntlet. The plans are one thing, the reality of that power is another. So they choose a valley no map marks by name, a bowl of dark earth and ancient stone tucked deep in Wakanda's interior, where the wind swallows sound and the sky feels closer than it should. Shuri seeds the ridgeline with vibranium pylons and holographic projectors. Banner's makeshift towers bristle with Stark-borrowed sensors, and Strange walks slow circles, murmuring words that turn the air thin and sharp as glass. "This matter is not up for debate," he says, when Thor grunts at the sight of so many precautions. "If the gauntlet reacts, it reacts to you in here, not over a city." For a moment, Thor almost laughs. Once, the boy who chased thunder in Asgard's courtyards would have welcomed the risk. Now, he can see the way Okoye's hand never quite leaves her spear, the way Banner won't look at the stones for more than a heartbeat. The gauntlet rests on a plinth of raw vibranium severed from Thanos' arm, fingers curled as if still reaching. The metal is scorched, spider-webbed with fractures, yet the 6 embedded stones pulse in slow, mismatched rhythm. Time's green flicker, power's violent red, space's cold blue. The others answering in turn. 6 hearts that do not need a body. Thor steps forward. Each footfall echoes off the valley walls as he begins to understand that this will not be a simple test of strength. Strange's sigils hang overhead, a lattice of gold and ember. Shuri's displays cascade with Wakandan script. Banner's readouts scroll in nervous, jittering lines. And at the center of it all, the last Asgardian reaches for the weapon that killed a god. His fingers close around the gauntlet. The first sensation is weight, not of metal, but of attention, as if 6 vast, indifferent minds turn to regard him. Then impact. Power slams through his arm and into his chest, a flood of color and sound that drowns out the valley, the world, everything. His eyes flare, blue giving way to violet, then green, then a blinding white as each stone pushes against his will, testing the same worthiness that once let him lift Mjolnir, but on a scale that makes even Stormbreaker feel provincial. Lightning erupts without thunder. Clouds spool into existence above them, spiraling in tight, unnatural patterns. Space flexes. The ridgeline seems to breathe, distant peaks shuddering half a step to the left before snapping back. For a moment, his vision fractures into a dozen paths at once. He can see Thanos falling on 100 different worlds, see himself crowned with a halo of orbiting meteors, see Earth burned clean under a merciful, instantaneous light. His knees hit stone, veins burn gold beneath his skin, racing up his neck, across his face. The plates of his armor splinter at the seams, glowing from within, as if something is trying to claw its way out. He knows that if he reaches just a little further, he could unmake the valley, or raise Asgard from the sea, or rewind the last hour until Stormbreaker never left his hand. Enough! Strange's voice cuts through the roar. The wards constrict, golden bands tightening around Thor's arm, bleeding off energy into the pylons. Shuri curses as several explode in showers of blue flame. Banner slams a control. A dome of translucent green snaps up, bending the wild lightning away from the observers. The gauntlet comes off with a sound halfway between a gasp and a scream. Thor slumps back, chest heaving, palms blistered where Godflesh met something older. Shuri's monitors confirm what they all felt. He survived direct contact with all 6 stones, channeled a fraction of their power, and held on. But the graphs spike into territories no human or Asgardian biology was meant to touch. Repeated exposure, Banner mutters, would not just kill him, it would change him, thought patterns warping under constant proximity to absolute power. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. If a guardian is needed, Thor is the closest thing the universe has to a living deterrent. And that is the problem, because as he opens his eyes, still rimmed with residual color, the others understand what they have actually proven. If Thor can bear the stones, even briefly, then others of comparable strength Earth might as well. A Hela reborn. A Carol Danvers pushed too far. Some warlord in the shadows who watched Thanos fail and whispered, "I'll do it better." Let's explore the depths of it. The gauntlet is no longer a myth. It is a tool, and tools never stay in one hand for long. Tony's line in the sand, "No more secrets." And Tony Stark hears that sentence echoing in his head as he stares at the holographic projection spinning above his wrist. A gauntlet as a tool. Tools never stay in one hand for long. He knows that better than anyone. For a moment, he almost shuts the display off and pretends he never saw the data trail that led him here. He doesn't. He begins digging. Lines of code, encrypted Wakandan signatures, traces of Kamartaj glyphs stitched into Stark-level firewalls that he definitely did not write. As he peels them back, the shape emerges. Energy models of the stones, stress maps of reality itself, simulations of unbinding them from existence. An unmaking project, built in the shadows of his own systems. The confrontation happens in a quiet lab, not a battlefield. Shuri, Banner, and Strange stand around a projection of the stones, their forms reduced to clean, clinical light. Tony steps in, jaw tight. So, Secret Science Fair, dismantle the most powerful artifacts in the universe behind everyone's backs. Ring any bells? Because where I'm standing, this is Ultron with better branding. Banner tries to explain, words tumbling over one another as he talks about risk curves and the next Thanos. Shuri's gaze is steady, unflinching, as she points out that Wakanda has already paid once for other people's secrets. Still, it's Strange who truly meets Tony's anger. The sorcerer does not flinch as he says that temptation must be removed entirely, that the stone's continued existence is an open wound in the fabric of possibility. Tony fires back, controlled power, contingencies. He can see the outlines of a vault, of layered defenses, of armor around the world, and around the stones themselves. We don't burn the playbook because we're scared of the game, he says, voice low. We lock it down, we monitor, we prepare. This matter is not up for debate if you're doing it inside my systems. Strange's reply cuts deeper than Tony expects. You already started, he says. Redundant gauntlet designs. Failsafe protocols keyed only to you. You're not arguing against secrets, Stark. You're arguing against secrets that aren't yours. For a moment, the lab is very still, the only sound the soft hum of Wakandan tech. Strange presses on, quieter now, but no less firm. Both of them are acting out of fear and trauma. Both are haunted by Titan, by the almost snap that still lives in their nerves. The difference, as he frames it, is philosophical. Tony wants a gun in a locked safe. Strange wants the bullets melted down, so no one can ever fire them again. The argument spirals. Shuri speaks of colonizers and weapons that always find their way back to the vulnerable. Banner mutters about the other guy and what a surge of stone energy might do to him. Tony hears them, but he also hears New York, hears Sokovia, hears every time someone else decided the world was too fragile to be trusted with the truth. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. If they can erase the stones in secret, what else can they quietly erase when it scares them enough? He turns away first. You keep going like this, behind closed doors. I blow the lid off, he says, not looking back. Press, governments, the whole terrified universe. You want to unmake the biggest safeguard and threat we've ever seen? You do it in the light. He walks out, leaving the projection of the stones flickering behind him, and with that vow, he sets the stage for something none of them are ready for, a coming storm where public panic and private responsibility will collide head-on. A cosmic visitor, Carol Danvers, returns to a different crisis. The projection of the stones still hangs in the air when the signal reaches her. Out in deep space, where human distress calls are usually decades too late, Carol Danvers glances down at the battered pager on her hip as he can see the old Earth tech sputter, catch, then flare with a strange delayed pulse. Fury's code, but distorted, stretched, as if the universe itself had hiccuped before deciding whether to die. She changes course without a word. For a moment, she braces herself for ash, empty cities, the silent drift of derelict ships. She has seen worlds after genocide, and he knows the pattern. No chatter on the bands, only automated beacons repeating the last screams of a planet. Yet as she breaks through Earth's atmosphere, the planet is loud, planes in the sky, power grids humming, a world wounded but not broken. At the compound, the reunion is not the one she expected. Fury is alive, not dust on the wind, and his one good eye narrows as he takes her in. He begins to explain, and the story comes out in jagged pieces. An alien warlord, Wakanda, a weapon through the chest, and then nothing. No snap, no 5-year void, just a corpse in a field, and 6 impossible stones gathered in one gauntlet. She listens, arms crossed, as holograms of the gauntlet flicker. Tony paces, thin and frayed, talking through containment fields and global oversight. T'Challa stands like a carved shadow, weighing duty to his people against the pull of a wider cosmos. Still, she was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again, not when the pattern is so familiar. Carol has watched the Kree Empire burn half a sector for a rumor of a single weapon. She has seen petty tyrants slaughter moons over a fragment of cosmic tech. 6 stones in one place? To her, it is not triumph. It is a flare shot into a hungry sky. You keep them here, she says, voice flat, and Earth becomes the most contested battleground in the galaxy. Every warlord, cult, and empire will come. Tony bristles. We just saved the universe. We're not handing the keys to someone else. T'Challa adds, measured but firm, that Wakanda will not see its soil stripped at the demand of those who never bled for it. This matter is not up for debate, not to them, but Carol only shakes her head. You think this is about trust. It's about gravity. Power pulls. Let's explore the depths of it as the argument sharpens. She proposes what to them sounds unthinkable. Remove the stones from Earth entirely, scatter them across distant galaxies, hide one in a dead system, and trust another to a neutral order in deep space. Place a third in a region so hostile that only a fool would seek it, not destroy them. She can see Strange's wince at that suggestion, but dilute the temptation. Tony fires back with numbers, global panic, the logistics of telling 7 billion people that their would-be destroyer has been replaced by a cosmic scavenger hunt. T'Challa worries aloud about colonial ghosts, about powers who would gladly see Earth disarmed. For a moment, the room fractures along fault lines that have nothing to do with Thanos and everything to do with history. In the end, Carol does not ask for permission. She offers a test. 1 stone, taken off-world under her protection, monitored by whatever safeguards Banner and Shuri can devise. If dispersal works, they continue. If it backfires, they adapt. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again, and neither is she. Her hand hovers over the projection of the stones, and the room goes quiet as everyone imagines the same thing. The instant that first stone leaves orbit, who else will feel it, and who will come chasing after it? Pattern. Interrupt. A universe of near misses and what-ifs. For a moment, freeze that image with them. The holographic stones hanging over the table, the room held in a breath that never quite releases. This is the point where our story steps off the familiar MCU rail line and walks into the dark, because Thor did what the Russos once said he should have done. He went for the head. The snap never comes. On paper, that sounds merciful. No blip, no 5-year time skip, no empty stadiums, abandoned cars, and therapy circles where Steve Rogers quietly counts the cost. But as he can see in this room, and as you can see from a distance, removing the great visible wound doesn't remove the sickness underneath. It only lets it spread in ways that are harder to name. Let's explore the depths of it. In the canon endgame path, the blip becomes a crucible. Tony retreats, then returns as a father, his entire arc bent around protecting a single small life in a universe of loss. Steve, the soldier, begins to sit in folding chairs and listen, becoming a counselor because there is nothing left to punch. Natasha turns into a coordinator, holding together a fraying network of heroes with coffee, holograms, and sheer stubbornness. The universe breaks, and in the breaking, they are forced to grow. Here, they win too quickly for that. There is no 5-year scar to force them into new shapes. Tony never has to choose between Morgan and the mission. Steve never has to accept that he cannot fix everything with a shield, so he never learns to simply sit with grief. Natasha never becomes the quiet general of a half-empty world, the boy from Brooklyn, the billionaire in the armor, the spy who keeps the lights on. All of them are spared that particular pain, and all of them are quietly robbed of what it would have made them. And you lose more than people, you lose moments. There is no broken, dust-coated Steve hearing Sam's voice in his ear, no portals blooming across a ruined battlefield, no hoarse, defiant Avengers assemble, echoing over a charging army. There is no Tony, trembling and burned, snapping his fingers, and accepting that this matter is not up for debate, not anymore. Instead of one operatic crescendo, you get something else, a long, low note of anxiety as 6 stones sit on a table and every power in the cosmos begins to listen. Because in a universe of superheroes, the most dangerous events are not always the ones with the biggest body counts. Sometimes it is the quiet survival of a weapon too powerful to be owned by anyone, and the way decent people begin to justify indecent compromises to keep it out of worse hands. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. That is what each Avenger tells themselves as they edge closer to becoming wardens of reality. So the blip never happens. But a power vacuum does. The Nova Core is shattered, the Kree are restless, the surviving Asgardians are adrift, and somewhere in the dark, someone watches Thanos fall and thinks, "I'll do it better." As he reaches for that idea, he begins to see not half a universe saved, but an unclaimed throne. From here, our path will not rush toward a single climactic battle. It will move toward a decision. Who, if anyone, is allowed to hold the Infinity Stones? And if the Avengers cannot bear that answer, can the Avengers as we know them continue to exist at all? The gauntlet leaves Earth, a risky compromise. The argument begins the moment the word off-world is spoken. No one wants to say it, but everyone can see it. As long as all 6 stones sit on one broken metal frame, the universe is one bad decision away from a second Thanos. Tony paces the Wakandan command tent, armor half open, hands already sketching designs in the air. He begins listing contingencies, safeguards, quantum locks. To him, the gauntlet is a terrible weapon, yes, but also the ultimate toolbox. Around him, Okoye, Banner, Rhodey, Carol, Thor, and Strange form a jagged circle, each holding to a different terror of what happens next. It is Strange who says it plainly: separate them. The stones were never meant to be focused through one hand, through one will. His voice is calm, but as he looks at the scorched metal on the table, he can see dozens of futures collapsing and reforming behind his eyes. Fragment the threat, he argues, and they fragment the temptation. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. Carol folds her arms, jaw set. She knows what empires do when they smell weakness. The Kree, the remnants of the Nova Corps, warlords who once bowed to Thanos. Word will spread that the gauntlet was on Earth. You keep all of them here, she says. You paint a giant target on this planet. Her proposal is brutal in its simplicity. The Power Stone and the Space Stone leave with her, carried so far into deep space that no single map can mark both their paths. T'Challa listens, weight of a nation and a planet in his silence. For a moment, he thinks of Killmonger, of how quickly righteous anger can become conquest when given better weapons. He worries that even if they surrender part of this power, Earth will still be blamed for ever holding it. Yet he also knows Wakanda cannot become the vault of the universe. This matter is not up for debate, he finally says, surprising even himself with the steel in his voice. We will not be the new throne of Thanos. The compromise is hard fought, every concession edged with resentment. In Shuri's lab, they work through the night. Vibranium rigs pry the stones from the twisted gauntlet, each extraction a small apocalypse of color and sound. The Power Stone screams violet against containment fields. The Space Stone ripples blue, warping the very air as he watches. Tony winces as each one leaves the frame, feeling potential slip through his fingers. Strange feels something subtler, as if the universe's weave tugs uneasily at being pulled in separate directions. Shuri and Banner design deep space capsules, layers of vibranium, Kree alloys from Carol's ship, and mystic sigils. Strange grudgingly etches into their cores. They are coffins and cradles at once, meant to hold what should never have been touched. Thor stands apart until the last moment, Stormbreaker grounded at his side. As he steps forward, he can see the Power Stone's glow reflected in the axe's metal, remembering the way it once burned through his people's enemies and his own arrogance. He insists on accompanying Carol to the edge of the system, not as a king demanding tribute, but as a guard escorting prisoners too dangerous to trust to any one realm. I will see where they go, he says. I will see who dares reach for them. Those left behind feel the loss in different ways. Tony stares at his projections of clean energy grids, planetary shields, rewritten diseases. They dissolve one by one as the stones are sealed away. Strange worries aloud that separating these forces might create new instabilities, unseen cracks in reality that only time will reveal. T'Challa fears that when the next tyrant comes hunting, they will not care that Earth tried to give some of the power back. At dawn, the Wakandan launch platform opens to the sky. Carol's ship rises on a column of light, Thor beside her, the two capsules locked in a suspension cradle between them. For a moment, everyone watches in silence as it punches through the clouds and vanishes toward the black. Back in the lab, the diminished gauntlet sits on its pedestal. 4 stones remain, their colors dimmer, but still pulsing, still hungry. Less complete, yes, far from harmless. And as the metal hums with fractured power, each Avenger is forced to ask a quieter, more dangerous question. If they have already given some of this away, what exactly are they still unwilling to let go of? A new Mad Titan in the making? For a moment, the camera lingers on those dimmed stones in the lab, humming with fractured light. Then the frame pulls back, farther and farther, until Earth is just another speck in a crowded sky, and the story shifts to a corner of the galaxy that has never cared much for Avengers or their victories. Here, on the gilded cradle world of Sovereign, the death of Thanos is not mourned, it is measured. High above a choir of golden drones, a single cocoon hangs open, its occupant fully formed at last. Adam Warlock stands before a bank of holographic projections, eyes reflecting 6 familiar colors, as he studies intercepted Kree reports, Nova casualty lists, and half-corrupted Titan legends about a farmer who became a god. He can see the pattern Thanos carved into the stars. He knows it was incomplete. He begins replaying footage of the Wakandan battle, reconstructed from distant sensor ghosts and rumor. The gauntlet flares. The axe falls. No snap, no universe-shattering roar, just failure at the final instant. To the High Priestess, this is proof that fate itself rejected Thanos' design. But Adam is not so easily convinced. The goal was sound, he murmurs, as he scrolls through population curves and resource charts that still bend toward collapse. The method was crude, visible, a butcher's answer to a surgeon's problem. On the far side of the sector, a Kree supremacist admiral reads the same reports and reaches a similar conclusion. In the tangled corridors of a damaged time ship, an early moving Kong variant traces those 6 stones across branching timelines, smiling thinly as he maps each divergence. Different figures, different empires, yet the same quiet realization. Thanos showed them what was possible, and in doing so, revealed exactly how not to proceed. This new philosophy is colder, more patient. Why tear half the universe away in one night, when you can let worlds forget they were ever whole? With the Reality Stone, histories can be rewritten until no one remembers another path. With the Mind Stone, dissent can be softened into devotion, not by torture, but by a gentle recalibration of what entire civilizations believe is right. With the Time Stone, crises can be nudged into place decades early or late, ensuring the natural rise of regimes that serve a hidden design. Let's explore the depths of it, a universe that walks willingly into its cage. So they begin to move, quietly. Adam redirects Sovereign forges towards stealthcraft and data siphons rather than warships. The Kree Admiral cultivates proxy cults and mercenary bands, sending them to embed within refugee fleets and newly formed defense coalitions. The Kang variant seeds technology and whispers into vulnerable eras, arranging for agents and instruments to be waiting wherever a stone might surface. None of them race to Earth in a blaze of glory. They slip into the networks now, forming around the gauntlet's remnants, around those 4 dim stones on their pedestal, and the 2 still lost in the dark. This matter is not up for debate, Adam tells his creators when they question the subtlety of his campaign. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. A Mad Titan rising, failing, and leaving chaos in his wake. The next reshaping will not hinge on a single theatrical snap or a lone warlord standing exposed on a battlefield. As he turns away from the projections, he speaks the quiet promise that will echo, unseen, across star systems. I will not die with the stones in my hand. I will live to see the universe remade in my image. And by the time the Avengers realize anything has changed, they will not remember what they are trying to save. Somewhere, in the lab on Earth, a stone flares, just for a moment, answering a call no one yet knows has been made. Tony's last gambit, a failsafe against the stones. That flare in the lab is not an accident, it is a response. Tony stands beneath a holographic lattice of the solar system, each orbit threaded with golden, crackling lines. He can see, for a moment, every recorded stone event mapped across space. New York, Nowhere, Xandar, Wakanda, Titan, each one a scar on a star chart. He knows there will be more. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. He begins isolating the signatures, the Space Stone's sharp blue spike, the Mind Stone's eerie, rhythmic pulse, the Reality Stone's chaotic red noise that refuses to stabilize. Friday overlays them with Stark satellite telemetry, the old Ultron-era defense grid, even dormant protocols from the Sokovia days. To anyone else, it would look like noise. To Tony, it's circuitry waiting to be closed. He calls it, in the privacy of an encrypted subfolder, the circuit breaker. On paper, it is simple. Stark micro-relays hidden in his satellites and in the nanotech laced through his own armor, keyed to the specific quantum frequencies of each stone. If a surge crosses a certain threshold within range, someone trying to bend reality, tear space, rewrite minds, the grid answers. It seizes the signal, feeds it back, and overclocks the wielder's nervous system and the gauntlet or conduit they're using. A forced shutdown, a cosmic trip switch. In practice, it is a loaded executioner's axe hanging invisibly over every god who dares touch that power. The pattern interrupt comes when he runs a simulation. The model wielder is not Thanos. It is Thor. Lightning arcs in the projection as the circuit breaker fires. The readings spike, then flatline. Thor drops, Stormbreaker cooling beside him. Collateral damage spreads in ugly red circles. Nearby cities, starships. Anyone too close when the feedback detonates. He swaps Thor's profile for Carol's, then Vision's. The result barely changes. The boy in the armor stares at the ghost of an Avenger dying by his hand. He finds Rhodey in the hangar, under the open ribs of the War Machine's suit. Metal, oil, the familiar smell of work. It steadies him, as he explains in clipped technical phrases that never quite hide the horror. A global, then interplanetary veto on stone usage. A kill switch. A promise that if anyone, friend or foe, tries to play God, he can end it. Rhodey listens. Then, he just says, "Is this about safety, or is this about you needing the final say?" Tony bristles. He throws out Thanos, New York, Ultron, the vision of the dead Avengers. He insists this matter is not up for debate. Someone has to hold the line. But as he speaks, he can see the memory of Sokovia in Rhodey's eyes, the echo of a younger Tony declaring he would put a suit of armor around the world, and nearly breaking it instead. "You're not talking about armor," Rhodey answers quietly. "You're talking about a firing squad only you control. What happens when Thor's on the wrong side of your line, or Carol, or me?" Later, in the lab, Pepper's silence is worse than any argument. She just asks one question. If you pull that switch and it kills them, do you still recognize the man who did it? He locks the failsafe behind biometric seals, deadman switches, multi-factor keys only he and Friday can parse, layers upon layers, as if code alone could restrain fear. He tells himself he will never use it lightly, that it exists only for the unthinkable. Let's explore the depths of it. The truth is that its existence changes everything long before it ever fires, because somewhere out there, stones are moving again. And now, when they flare, they are not only answering to the will of whoever holds them, they are answering to Tony Stark's unseen hand, waiting, patient, in the dark circuitry between stars. The secret ritual begins, unmaking reality's building blocks. So when those hidden relays in deep space finally answer Tony Stark's dead man's signal, the response does not happen in a lab or on some clean, sterile platform. It happens in a wound. The mound rises from the heart of Wakanda, a jagged swell of raw vibranium that still hums with the memory of the battle. Shuri stands at the edge of the carved platform, eyes moving between hovering hard light displays and the crude, terrible thing resting at its center. The stripped gauntlet, its metal peeled back, the stones resting in a ring of etched sigils that are not Wakandan at all. They are Kamartaj work, circles within circles, lines that refuse to stay flat, glowing faintly as he begins his chant. Strange stands opposite her, cloak stirring in a wind that hasn't decided to exist yet. Wong anchors the western point of the circle, jaw tight as he feeds power into the lattice. Banner hunches near Shuri, half in awe, half in terror, watching numbers spike into ranges that, until this night, were theory. Thor lingers just outside the primary ring, Stormbreaker planted in the vibranium floor, gaze fixed on the Power Stone as if it might leap at him. For a moment, I would ask you to reconsider, Wong mutters, not taking his eyes off the shimmering geometry. We are not meant to unmake the building blocks of creation. This matter is not up for debate, Strange answers, voice low but absolute. They've already been used to rewrite half of existence once in my futures. I will not allow that line to be crossed again. Thor hears the edge in his tone. He knows that edge. It's the sound of a man who has watched something happen too many times. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again, not if there was even a chance to be rid of the stones forever. The apparatus is brutal and elegant all at once. Vibranium pylons rise around the ring, each capped with a Kamartaj-focused crystal. Thin threads of orange energy link them to the sigils under each stone. Above, Wakandan projectors create a shimmering wireframe of the local space-time grid, a map of the universe's fabric waiting to be rewritten. On your mark, Doctor, Shuri says softly. She can see the energy stone's readings climbing, leaking into bands she has no name for. Strange raises his hands. The air thickens as he speaks, each syllable tugging at something older than language. The stones lift from their cradles, one by one, hanging in the air between them. Color bleeds out of them in threads. Green, red, blue, yellow, purple, orange, weaving together, then out, then down into the sigils, and up into the waiting grid. Reality buckles. They don't just feel pressure, they feel options. Brief flashes slam against their senses. A Wakanda choked with ash. Titan, empty and echoing. A universe where the boy with the metal arm lies dead and the android lives. Another where the stones are nothing but dust, and the sky is wrong. Shuri gasps as her displays fracture, multiple timelines overlaying for a moment before snapping back. Banner stumbles, seeing himself half Hulk, half man, sitting at a diner that never existed. Thor can see a battlefield where he did not aim for the head, hears the crack of a snap that never came, yet still echoes in his bones. Hold, Strange snarls, sweat beading at his brow as he forces the threads outward, trying to diffuse them into the cosmic background, to let them dissolve into the quiet roar between galaxies. That is when something pushes back. It is not a hand, it is not a voice. It is the universe itself, or something older wearing the universe as a mask, seizing the converging streams and shoving them inward. The stones flare, colors blinding, their light turning hard and furious. The vibranium mound screams, cracks spiderweb out from the ritual circle, racing through metal that should not break. Shuri is thrown to her knees as gravity lurches sideways. Wong's shield shatters. Banner feels his atoms argue about which timeline they belong to. Strange staggers, eyes wide, as he realizes the truth. They are not unmaking constants. They are attacking a throne, and whatever sits on it has just decided to answer. Fracture point, Avengers versus Avengers. Over the stones. For a moment, no one breathes. The throne they cannot see has stirred, and that is when the doors give way. Alarms scream through the Wakandan lab as reinforced panels buckle. Steve drives through first, shield up, Tony right behind him in searing red gold, Natasha, T'Challa, and Okoye at his flanks. Wanda a step slower, eyes already searching for the boy she cannot lose twice. They take in the scene in jagged fragments. Vision bound in Shuri's lattice of light, the Mind Stone half-phased from his skull, Wong and Strange ringed in spinning sigils, the gauntlet suspended mid-air, each stone burning at a pitch that makes the air taste of metal and storm. The floor itself seems to crawl, reality trying to remember what shape it had a second ago. Tony stops dead. Tell me this is a containment field, he says, voice thin beneath the sarcasm. He begins scanning before anyone answers, HUD flooded with readings that make no sense. The numbers spike, then fold in on themselves. He knows runaway feedback when he sees it. Shut it down, he snaps. Right now, Wizard. Hit the off switch before we turn Wakanda into a supernova. Strange does not look at him at first. He can see only the spiraling geometries of probability, the way each stone strains against the others, the way the ritual has hooked into something older than the universe they stand in. When he finally speaks, his voice is hoarse. There is no off switch. We are past the point of no return. To stop now is to let it all detonate without guidance. This matter is not up for debate, Tony fires back, stepping closer, repulsors warming. We're improvising surgery on the laws of physics with a butter knife. Pull the plug. Then Wanda sees Vision, really sees him. The Mind Stone is being pulled free again, threads of golden energy unspooling through Shuri's machines. Vision's body jerks, as if some unseen hand is already reaching through time to crush his skull. The last time she stood here, she killed the man she loved to save half the universe. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again, and neither is she. Scarlet energy flares around her hands before she knows she's moving. "Stop," she cries, voice cracking as she hurls a telekinetic wave that slams into the lattice, into Strange's sigils, into Tony as he tries to interpose. The pattern shatters. Wong staggers. Shuri's grip on the Mind Stone slips. Strange swears under his breath as he throws counterspells, trying to cradle the collapsing geometry. T'Challa surges forward to drag Shuri clear as sparks and fragments of hard light slice the air. Steve plants himself between Tony and the circle, shield raised. "Everybody stand down," he orders, though his eyes are on Vision, on Wanda, on the way the boy's face is already slackening. Natasha catches Wanda's arm, only to be thrown back by another uncontrolled pulse. Repulsor beams, hex bolts, vibranium and sorcery collide. Each impact sends a fresh ripple through the gauntlet. The stones answer with their own language of pain. Time stutters, space folds, then snaps. For a moment, Tony sees 3 different positions for Steve's shield at once, and realizes they are standing inside a blender made of timelines. Strange braces, fingers twisting through a final, desperate mudra. "No one move," he warns. "Touch nothing, or we lose more than Thanos." Reality does not listen. The Reality Stone screams. Red light erupts from it in a spear that punches through the lab, through the mountain, through the sky. Alarms die mid-wail as sound itself warps. Glass melts into sand, then reforms as flowers before disintegrating again. Then, with a sound like a universe inhaling, the stone fractures, not explodes, not crumbles. It simply comes apart, dissolving into a storm of crimson shards that sink into everything and nothing. One fragment brushes Natasha's cheek and vanishes under her skin. Another passes straight through Tony's armor, leaving no mark he can see. When the light fades, the gauntlet hangs lighter. One socket is empty, edges blackened, smoking. Vision lies motionless. Wanda is on her knees. Tony's HUD shows a reading that should be impossible. 6 signatures, then 5, then something else entirely. They have broken a fundamental piece of the universe. Whether that means they have partially succeeded or unleashed a new kind of nightmare, no one in that room can yet say. Let's explore the depths of it. Aftermath of a broken stone. New rules of the game. For a moment, no one moves. The crater where the stone once sat in Vision's forehead is not just absence. It is an open wound in reality, edges twitching, colors bleeding in and out of the visible spectrum, as if the universe itself is trying to remember what used to be there. Then, the room shudders, not from impact, but from contradiction. Tony's HUD glitches, cycling between readouts that insist everyone is present and others that insist half the room is missing. Rhodey's armor vanishes for a heartbeat, leaving him suspended in midair before the metal snaps back around him. Across the field, an Outrider army stutters, frames missing, some collapsing into dust before reassembling with a howl that doesn't quite sync with their mouths. Worse are the people. Shuri clutches her chest as he can see her eyes lose focus, as if she's standing in 3 places at once, and none of them are entirely real. A Wakandan soldier screams as his arm fades to bone, then to nothing, then returns, flesh knitting in reverse. Souls feel it even if they do not have words. A wrench, a brief dislocation, the sense that for a single heartbeat, their thread was cut and hastily tied back. Strange stands in the middle of it, cloak rippling in a wind no one else can feel. He begins tracing sigils, not for defense this time, but to map the fracture. Banner, half Hulk, half scientist, is already muttering numbers, density, energy, Planck scales, trying to force this chaos into an equation. They meet eyes, and in that shared look, he knows. This is not teleportation, this is unmaking. The core essence is gone, Banner says, voice hoarse. Not moved, dispersed. The field it generated, it's smeared across the vacuum. Strange finishes the thought quietly. The stone is no longer a stone. Its function has been dissolved into the fabric of reality. It sounds like victory. It feels like playing surgery with a grenade, because if one fundamental constant can be shattered and spread thin, what stops the rest from unraveling in sympathy? Tony stares at the smoking fragments on the ground, and for a moment, he can see a dozen scenarios: gravity fluctuating, causality slipping, entire star systems blinking in and out because the rules that define them have been edited mid-sentence. This matter is not up for debate, he says, more to himself than to anyone else. We are not doing that again. Steve, armor cracked, shield gone, doesn't argue. He just nods, jaw tight. For once, they are perfectly aligned. They have crossed a line they didn't know existed, and still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. Pattern interrupt. The battlefield goes quiet. No gunfire, no screams. Just a low, distant hum, as if the sky is listening. Far beyond Wakanda, in a place where light curves and time thickens, something old stirs. A watcher of epochs, or perhaps a new player entirely, lifts its head. It feels the disturbance, the fading of a familiar song. The age of Infinity Stones is ending, and as he turns his gaze toward the tiny blue world that dared to rewrite the rules, he begins to move. If that power is slipping away, then he must act quickly, before there is nothing left to claim. Let's explore the depths of it in what comes next. A universe without the soul, Stone's mercy. The disturbance moves first through silence. No armies, no explosions, just a quiet subtraction that only a few beings in the universe are attuned enough to feel. On Titan, as the dust of battle settles around broken moons and shattered egos, Strange straightens for a moment, his eyes narrowing. Something in the weave of reality has gone thin, not torn, not shattered. Thinned, as if a single thread of meaning has been pulled free, half a galaxy away. In the forests of Wakanda, Wanda feels it too. She's still clutching vision, still shaking from the choice she thought she'd never have to make again, when the air around her seems to lose a layer of pressure. The boy in her arms is alive, his mind stone dim but stable, yet his presence feels less anchored. Souls used to press against her power at the edges, a constant background chorus of grief and love. Now that chorus is distant, muffled, as if the choir has been moved into another room. If the stone that cracked in Thor's final strike was the Soul Stone, the change is subtle at first. Sorcerers on Kamartaj find that rituals to contact ancestral spirits demand more effort, more sacrifice. The astral plane responds more sluggishly. Places once rich with echoes of the dead feel hollowed out, their memories still present, but their judgment gone. Even beings bound to that orange gem's cruel logic are affected. On Vormir, Red Skull's vigil ends in an instant. There is no flash, no scream. One moment, he is warden and prisoner both. The next, he simply is not. The post has been abandoned because the post itself no longer exists. Thor does not have Strange's language for any of this. Still, he can see it in the way the world feels when he calls the storm. The thunder answers, but there is less weight behind it, less sense of some vast, unseen ledger keeping score of oaths sworn and debts unpaid. As he watches lightning crawl over Stormbreaker's edge, he knows he has killed a tyrant. He does not yet understand he has also severed a vein in the universe's conscience. Strange, though, begins too. He paces amid Titan's ruins, cloak twitching in agitation, as he tests spell after spell and finds each one that touches the soul meeting resistance where once there was a single, terrible focal point. The Soul Stone had been a prison and an altar, a place where sacrifice, love, and cruelty were tallied with absolute indifference. With it gone, those forces spill outward, uncontained, dispersing through creation with no center to bind them. What happens when there is no longer any one place where the universe weighs what a life is worth? Let's explore the depths of it. Without that external judge, morality stops being something the cosmos enforces and becomes something only mortals and gods can choose. There is no more Vormir demanding a price, no more Red Skull reminding would-be conquerors that power must be paid for in blood. A villain who might once have been lured, tested, or trapped by the stone's bargain now moves unchecked, their soul never called to account by anything beyond their own fractured will. This matter is not up for debate in Strange's mind. Some evils, he knows, were only barely containable when there was a single knot in reality where souls could be bound, redirected, or sacrificed to keep greater horrors asleep. Now that knot is gone. The barriers between life and death grow more brittle, yet paradoxically, true resurrection through magic becomes harder, as if the pathways have lost their destination. There is no office to file the paperwork of miracles with, only scattered, improvised loopholes, and all of it traces back to one moment in Wakanda, one choice made in rage and grief as Thor buried Stormbreaker in Thanos' skull. In aiming for the head, the god of thunder may have done more than stop a snap. He may have started the slow unraveling of the very metaphysical architecture that made such a victory possible. The tyrant is dead, the universe spared, but the scaffolding that held certain horrors in place is rotting. Somewhere out in the dark, something ancient feels the absence of that orange light and smiles. If there is no longer a throne where souls are judged, then who, or what, will rush to build a new one? Thor's quiet breakdown, the weight of the unseen, war. Thor does not dream of the snap. There is no ash on the wind in his nightmares, no empty Wakandan fields. Instead, when sleep finally drags him under, he finds himself back in council chambers and dim-lit strategy rooms, trapped at long tables where the enemy is not a purple titan, but a stack of star charts and treaty drafts that never stop growing. On the rebuilt Asgardian vessel, moored for a time above Wakanda, the corridors are quiet, the refugees sleep, the engines hum. Thor sits alone in a darkened observatory, Stormbreaker resting against the wall, watching the fractured light of the stones ripple in a containment field far below. He can see them even with his eyes closed, not as weapons, as questions he cannot answer with an axe. In canon, his failure was simple: one missed shot, one cruel sentence from Thanos, and then oblivion, a clean wound he could pour all his self-hatred into. Here, the wound will not close, because it has no single edge. He begins to realize that every day brings another almost disaster: a Kree admiral demanding custody of the Power Stone, a panicked Nova Corps remnant begging for protection, sorcerers warning that the barrier around the Soul Stone is thinning. No one sings about the meetings that avert wars by a hair's breadth. It is Rocket who finds him there. The others are busy drafting protocols with Shuri and Strange, arguing over who is allowed within 10 meters of which gem. The raccoon pads in, chewing on something that might once have been a snack, and for a moment, Thor almost laughs at the absurdity of it. A god of thunder, confessing to a talking animal. "You got what you wanted," Rocket says, settling beside him. "You went for the head." Thor's jaw tightens. "Did I?" He stares out at the stars as he speaks, as if the dark might answer. "I killed him." Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. Another would have risen. Now it is not one war, Rocket. It is 1,000 arguments that never end. He knows Rocket understands more than he lets on. The little captain just grunts. Beats being dead, then quieter, most days. Later, on a visit to a secluded Wakandan grove where the stones are briefly housed in layered wards, it is Steve who catches Thor standing too close to the glowing cases. The air smells of earth and distant fires. The colors of the stones bleed through the vibranium lattice, tempting, patient. "What are you thinking?" Steve asks. He already fears the answer. Thor does not lie. That I could end this, erase the memory of them, make the universe forget the stones ever existed, undo the choices that led us here. His hand lifts, just a fraction, as he imagines it. No councils, no fragile coalitions, no children growing up under the shadow of 6 colors. Then the thought curdles, because he can see Thanos' face in that fantasy, hear the Titan's certainty, mercy through force, peace through amputation. This matter is not up for debate. Thor steps back as if burned. That path is his, he says, almost to himself, not mine. So he resolves, in that quiet grove, to endure, to sit through the endless negotiations, to shoulder the blame when compromises fail, to live with the knowledge that there will be no statues raised for sleepless nights and tedious victories. Let others chase glory on battlefields. He will guard this unseen war for as long as he must, because if he does not, who will? Doctor Strange's final choice. One future, or many. On the surface, the war is over. Thanos lies dead on Wakandan soil, Stormbreaker buried where the head should have been, and for a moment the universe breathes. Yet in the quiet that follows, Stephen Strange discovers that his real battle is only beginning. He returns to Kamartaj, to the chamber where the Time Stone once rested. The eye of Agamotto is a hollow relic now, its clasp cool and inert in his hand as he begins the familiar gesture of opening it, almost by habit. Nothing answers. No green light, no wheel of possible tomorrows, only the faint, dissonant echo of power spent and rewritten on a distant battlefield. He can see the residue, though. Threads of temporal energy clinging to the air, frayed and smoking where the stones should have anchored them. When he reaches out with his senses, the vision that comes is not a clean fan of futures, but a storm, branching paths that split, rejoin, and shear away under the pressure of 6 stones, used in ways they were never meant to be. Thanos died with all of them bound to his will. Thor's strike shattered that will mid-command. The rules have changed. Once, on Titan, he spoke with the certainty of a man who had watched 14,605 outcomes and found the single thread that led to victory, one future, one necessary sacrifice. It had felt almost merciful then, to compress chaos into a single brutal line. Now, as he stands in the dim light of the Sanctum's library, he knows that certainty was a luxury, and perhaps a sin. Wong finds him tracing circles on the stone floor, a vast diagram of interlocking rings and branching marks sketched in chalk and emerald flame. At the center, Strange stands motionless, robes pooling around him as if he were the fixed point the universe still needed. "You're trying to force it back," Wong says, not unkindly, "back into one path." Strange does not deny it. He speaks of the Black Order remnants, of Kree warlords and Kree rivals, of what happens when 6 masterless stones sit in a broken gauntlet on a contested world. He outlines, with clinical precision, how one misstep could birth a tyrant worse than Thanos. This matter is not up for debate, he insists, half to Wong, half to himself. But it is, Wong replies, because you are not the universe, you are a man. Are you prepared to live in a world where you cannot guarantee the outcome? Where the boy with the axe, the man in the armor, the woman who loves the android, all choose for themselves? The question hangs there, heavy. In another life, he might have barked a dismissal. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again, not after seeing what almost was. His hands flex at his sides as he imagines reaching deeper, forcing the branches to converge, nudging minds and moments until they match some hidden, optimal design. Let's explore the depths of it. That is the temptation, to be less a guardian and more a puppeteer. He looks down at the diagram. Every line he has drawn insists on an endpoint. Every ring tries to close. Slowly, deliberately, he raises his hand and wipes through the center, smearing chalk, breaking the perfect geometry into a messy sprawl of half-formed roots. Thor's altered shot did more than kill a tyrant. It killed Strange's illusion that there was ever only one way. The future is not a corridor but a field, and no stone will ever again show him the whole of it. His role now is narrower and, in its way, harder. Not to engineer perfection, but to stand at the edge of this imperfect world and help it survive its own agency. As he steps out of the circle, he lets the last traces of green light fade from his eyes. The next moves will belong to others. He will advise, warn, and when he must oppose, but he will not choose for them. Because if he does, who will stop him when his own path goes wrong? A new status quo. Avengers as stewards, not saviors. The green light fades from Strange's eyes, and what replaces it is procedure, not prophecy, not destiny, just the slow, grinding work of deciding what to do with power that can erase suns. For a moment, no one reaches for the gauntlet. They've all seen what it can do. No one wants that on their hands. In the weeks that follow, the compromise takes shape, not in a single triumphant speech, but in arguments that drag on past midnight and in exhausted signatures across too many languages. The Reality Stone is unmade first, its essence carefully unraveled by Strange and Wong, while Carol waits in orbit, ready to blast the remains into a dead star if anything goes wrong. The Power Stone follows, shattered under controlled conditions, and its fragments scattered in empty interstellar space under Nova Corps watch. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again, so Rocket insists on redundancies. Decoy coordinates, false trails, and a ship registry only he and Nebula can access. Not every stone can be destroyed without tearing existence apart. Strange knows this, and he can see the same realization settle over the room as they debate. The Time Stone returns to Kamartaj, layered under wards that require unanimous consent from a new oversight body. The Mind Stone, too dangerous to keep whole, is dispersed, its core sealed within a quantum vault on Xandar, its residual echoes entrusted to Vision's rebuilt form as a living warning of what it once was. One stone, the Space Stone, remains on Earth, but buried beneath Wakanda in a vibranium labyrinth that would take centuries to decode, even if anyone could breach Shuri's algorithms. To manage all of this, institutions have to change. They begin meeting in a neutral hall in Wakanda, T'Challa and Shuri, Strange and Wong, Carol when she can spare the time, representatives from the Guardians, Okoye, Rhodey, and a rotating selection of global leaders who understand, at least in part, what sits beneath their feet. This is not a war council, it is a stewardship council. Their charter is simple on paper and impossible in practice. The stones will never again be assembled, never again weaponized. This matter is not up for debate. Tony steps back from the center, but not cleanly. He leaves behind a lattice of fail-safes, satellites keyed to exotic signatures, armor protocols that lock out even him if certain thresholds are crossed, a final contingency buried in code that only Friday can interpret. It is his grim legacy, a promise that if someone reaches for the stones, something will reach back. Steve, by contrast, returns to the ground. He begins spending more time on relief missions, on border disputes, on the quiet, unfilmed work of keeping people from tearing each other apart. Natasha takes the chair no one wanted, coordinating responses from the council, learning to move pieces on a board where the nuclear option is no longer an option at all. There is no portal-filled finale to mark this transition, no army of heroes charging across a ruined field, just handshakes in secure rooms, oaths spoken over conference tables, and the occasional bitter joke from Rocket as he signs yet another security addendum. Let's explore the depths of it. This is what victory looks like when the dust settles and no one has vanished. It is messy, it is unsatisfying, it is real. The universe has survived Thanos without the blip, but no one walks away believing the story is over. Strange has seen too many futures to pretend otherwise. Carol knows there are empires already calculating how to test this new order. Thor, staring at the stars from what remains of the statesman, understands that somewhere, someone is telling themselves they will do it better than the Titan did, and as the council adjourns one more quiet session, as he watches those doors close, Strange cannot shake a single unnerving question. When the next hand reaches for what's left of infinity, will these stewards still be enough to stop it? Comparing timelines. Was this really better than Endgame? For a moment, Strange simply listens to the echo of that question in his own mind. Then, the comparison begins, unbidden. Two futures, both terrible in their own ways, both saved and scarred by the same handful of people. In the canon path, the knife lands where it did not hear. Thor goes for the chest, the snap happens, and the universe is torn in half. There is the blip, the 5-year wound that never quite closes, the hollowed-out stadiums and empty classrooms. There is the portal battle, that impossible roar of Avengers assemble as he can see every dusted ally return in a single, blinding act of narrative mercy. And there is Tony, hand shaking around a stolen gauntlet, burning himself away to end it. Here, those markers never arrive. No 5-year jump, no abandoned boats in New York Harbor, no child named Morgan learning to love a father, already half in mourning. Instead, there is a living Tony, still restless, still unfinished. Natasha never trades her life for a stone. She walks through the slower Cold War, making compromises in back rooms instead of dying on Vormir. Vision survives, rebuilt and altered, the boy in Wanda's arms, not a memory, but a question of what it means to keep someone beyond their appointed time. The emotional trade is not neat. In the canon timeline, the Blip's trauma forges something hard and bright between the survivors. Steve's support groups, Clint's fall and halting return, Thor's breakdown, and slow climb back all led toward a single cathartic crest. Here, the pain is thinner but more persistent, stretched over years of arguments and close calls as he begins to understand that preventing the snap did not prevent the temptation that caused it. The heroes are spared the sharpest grief, but they never receive the same clear, redemptive climax. Thor himself is the clearest fracture. He avoids the visible collapse, the beer cans, and the self-loathing played for uneasy smiles. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. Instead, he carries a quieter burden, knowing he did what everyone said he should have done, and yet watching new hands circle the same power. Wanda keeps Vision, but the instability that came from loss in canon now threatens to come from fear of losing him, from councils debating whether a synthezoid with a stone should even exist. Strange learns humility earlier, stripped of certainty as every new crisis proves his 14,605 futures were not a closed book. Here the pattern interrupts itself. Which is better, a world with fewer graves, or one with a cleaner story? This matter is not up for debate, he knows, not in any court that counts, yet the question lingers. Morally, fewer deaths feel undeniable. Narratively, the absence of a single, decisive sacrifice leaves everything messier, more human, and less satisfying, so it returns to you. If you could choose between the canon endgame crescendo and this no-blip, slow-burn struggle over the legacy of the stones, where would you stand? And, more unsettling still, now that he has walked both paths in his mind, which future would Doctor Strange choose, if the choice ever came again? Final reflection. Thor's aim and the cost of getting it right. So we go back to that single instant on Titan. Stormbreaker humming with newborn power, the sky split open, and Thor driving the axe clean through Thanos' skull. No quip, no gloating, just a brutal, efficient end. For a moment, it feels perfect. The Mad Titan dies before he can even think of closing his fist, and the universe is spared the blip. But as he stands over the body, chest heaving, he can see the line stretching out from that perfect swing. The gauntlet still crackles on a severed arm, the stones still burn. Ownerless, answering to no will and every temptation. That precise, correct strike does not close the book. It tears the pages loose and throws them to the wind. On Wakanda, ships crash without orders, outriders scatter, and yet the war does not end. It fragments, it metastasizes, as every surviving power begins to ask the same question. Who holds the hand that once wore that glove? Thor doesn't know it yet, but this matter is not up for debate. The moment he aims for the head, he inherits everything that would have followed the snap, and everything that now follows its absence. There is no 5-year void, no broken god drinking himself into oblivion, but there is a king who must wake each day to counsels about stone custody, to reports of Kree admirals probing defenses, to whispers that the Asgardian who felled Thanos should simply claim the gauntlet and end all argument. He begins to understand that the clean kill was the easy part. Let's explore the depths of it. In canon, his failure sits on him like a physical weight. He knows exactly where he went wrong, and Endgame gives him a narrow, blazing path to redemption. Swing again, this time at the neck, and stand under the portals as the universe forgives him in a single roar. Here, he did everything right, tactically. There is no obvious sin to confess, no single mistake to fix. The cost of getting it right is slower, duller, but in some ways sharper. Endless stewardship, endless second-guessing, the dawning realization that there was never going to be a shot that solved this. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. If Thanos fell, someone else would rise. If the stones were locked away, someone would come to break the locks. Heroism becomes less about the moment on Titan and more about the decades after, about showing up to the meetings, to the funerals, to the negotiations where no one leaves entirely satisfied. Canon gives us spectacle, the catharsis of portals, and one last charge. This branch gives us something quieter and more somber, a universe saved in an instant, then slowly endangered by what that salvation leaves behind. No Ronin stalking Tokyo, no little Morgan Stark, no Professor Hulk, but also no easy narrative of fall and redemption for the God of Thunder, only the long gray work of being the man who swung first and must now live with the ripples. So sit with that discomfort. There is no version where everyone walks away clean, only different shapes of loss and different burdens to carry. As we step into the final stretch of this story, hold that image of Thor on Titan, not as the end of the tale, but as the first, irrevocable step into a world where getting it right was only the beginning. What this AU reveals about the MCU's heart, Thor's axe in Thanos' skull, gives us a brutal kind of clarity. The universe lives, the dust never falls, yet for a moment, the battlefield goes silent in a way that feels almost wrong, because this version of events exposes something the MCU has circled from the beginning. Killing the monster is never the same as curing the world that bred him. In this no-blip timeline, the gauntlet still crackles, the ships still hang in the sky, the Nova Corps is already shattered on distant Xandar, the Asgardians are scattered and broken, and Earth has spent a decade answering escalation with escalation. Thanos dies, but the structures that made him possible remain. Shaky councils, unaccountable empires, a universe where power keeps concentrating into fewer and fewer hands. The boy from Asgard, who chased personal vengeance, discovers the same truth Steve Rogers has been pushing against since the helicarriers over the Potomac. You can cut off the head, and the system simply grows another. That's why both timelines, canon and this AU, bend toward the same quiet question: who is allowed to decide the fate of the many? In one, a single mad titan closes his fist, and the sky goes dark. In the other, the Avengers close ranks around 6 stones and begin arguing over accords, safeguards, and ownership. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. Tony knows that if he doesn't build the rules, someone worse will. Strange sees councils of sorcerers. Thor sees kings and all-fathers. Carol sees militaries and fleets. The alternative, a messy, shared stewardship of power by a diffuse, uncertain chorus of voices, feels slower, riskier, harder to dramatize, but the story keeps glancing toward it. So when we ask, what if Thor had aimed for the head, we are not second-guessing the script so much as turning it in our hands, testing the weight of the choice Marvel actually made. Canon gives us operatic loss, 5 years of absence, shrines by the bay, a broken god who cannot lift his own hammer of guilt. This AU trades that for something quieter, but no less heavy: ongoing responsibility, endless committee meetings over reality itself, the knowledge that saving everyone once does not absolve you from safeguarding them tomorrow, which cost feels truer to what power really demands. Through it all, the stones stay the MCU's most honest mirrors. In any timeline, whoever reaches for them cannot hide from what they already are. The Mind Stone lays bare Tony's control issues as he builds armor around the world. The Space and Power Stones echo Thor's failure and guilt as he can see every realm he did not save. The Time Stone feeds Strange's hubris, convincing him he alone has seen enough futures to justify any bargain. The boy on the Sokovian street becomes Wanda Maximoff, and the stones only sharpen her grief into something cosmic. They promise quick fixes, but they only ever magnify the hands that hold them, and that includes us, watching, wishing the heroes would just fix it faster. Let's explore the depths of it. How you respond to this AU says as much about you as it does about Thor. If you find yourself craving the clean kill on Titan, perhaps you are tired of stories where ordinary people pay for celestial mistakes. If you miss the canon blip, perhaps you feel that only massive, undeniable loss can shake a world awake. This matter is not up for debate in universe, but out here, in the space between screen and story, you are part of the council. As we move into the final stretch, hold on to that, because the next question isn't just what the Avengers should do with this power, but what you believe they must never do again. Your turn. Choose your future, and shape the next. What if Thor's axe is buried in the Titan's skull? The snap never comes. For a moment, the universe breathes. But you've walked this road with us long enough to know survival is not the same thing as salvation. So now it's your turn. Looking at this branch we've traced, no blip, no 5-year scar, no portals opening over a ruined battlefield. Do you believe Thor's aim created a better universe than the one we saw in Endgame, or a more dangerous one that only looks safer on the surface? He can see the blood on Stormbreaker and think he's finished the work, but you may feel the real war has only just begun. Tell us where you stand. Do you think this is the one future Doctor Strange refused to choose? The path where the stones linger in mortal hands too long, tempting kings and killers both? Or do you think this is the mercy route, the one where Tony gets to go home that same night, where Wanda never has to feel Vision crumble into dust, where the boy from Brooklyn never has to wake up in a world 5 years older than him again? This matter is not up for debate in universe, but out here, it absolutely is. We want you to be specific. If 6 stones lie cooling in a broken gauntlet on Wakandan soil, who reaches for them first in your mind? Is it Stark, half mad on Titan and desperate to make sure no one ever threatens Earth again? Is it Strange, quietly deciding that if anyone must bear them, it should be the man who has already stared into 14,605 nightmares? Or does someone else slip through the chaos? Shuri, Fury, even someone from the surviving Black Order, convinced they can do it better than Thanos? Let's explore the depths of it in the comments. Tell us whose arc improves, and whose fractures. Does Thor finally lay down the hammer's weight, or does he begin to break under the knowledge that one swing rewrote all of history? Does Wanda's story heal without the blip, or does Vision's survival open a different wound later when the universe comes to collect its debt? Which single moment in this timeline would you most want to see fully dramatized on screen? The first council over the gauntlet, the trial of whoever dares to claim it, or the night Tony stares at the stars, knowing Thanos is dead, but the pattern that birthed him is not? And then, look beyond this branch. If this is the path where Thor aimed true, what other turning points call to you? Strange refusing to give up the Time Stone, and forcing Thanos to take it by brutal force. Star-Lord never being abducted, growing old on Earth, while someone else becomes the galaxy's most reckless guardian. Loki surviving Endgame, slipping away from the ruins of the Statesman to scheme in the shadows of a universe that never knew the blip. Which of those futures feels most urgent to you, and which wildcard have we not even named yet? This channel lives in those questions. Slow burn, narrative-focused speculation is the heart of what we do, following one altered choice until it reshapes empires, friendships, and whole cosmologies. Still, he was hardly going to sit by and allow this to happen again. That's how Robert thought of Eris, and it's how heroes in the MCU think of men like Thanos. But the truth is, the next step in each of these timelines is not set until we walk it together. Your theories, your debates, your disagreements in the comments are the map we use when we choose which branch to follow next. So tell us, did Thor save the universe, or only delay its reckoning? Which hand should close around the stones in this world where the snap never came? And when we leave this battlefield behind, which fork in the MCU's road should we take next? Thor aimed for the head, and the universe lived, but the story didn't end. It just bent in a different direction. The question now is simple. Which direction do you want to walk down next?